Would the city clerk please call the roll?
Councilman DeCiccio. Here. Councilwoman Gallego.
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Here.
Councilwoman Stark.
Here.
Councilman Valenzuela.
Here.
Councilman Waring. Councilwoman Williams.
Here.
Vice Mayor Pastor. Mayor Stanton.
Here. Our interpreter, Ms. Holm, is here. Please introduce yourself. Good to see you.
Buenas tardes, me llamo Judy, soy intérprete de español. Si alguien necesita el equipo, por favor venga conmigo o con el personal de la ciudad. Gracias.
Thank you so much. We now have citizen comments. Citizens have up to 3 minutes to provide testimony for this council on items not on today's agenda. The first speaker under citizen comment is Mr. Leonard Clark, followed by Mr. Alan F. Ward.
Hello, thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Leonard Clark. I'm a resident of Phoenix, born right down the street at Good Samaritan Hospital. There's several things I wanted to speak with you, but first let me just state this. Thank you to all the veterans who've served and who are serving right now and who never came back, because I wouldn't be here speaking. We'd be flying a German flag or a Japanese flag. So anyways, and the civil rights activists who also have fought for our constitutional First Amendment right to have free speech. Anyways, I'm here because the Clinton Campbell House, I'm just going to get right to it. You know, I beat around the bush sometimes. The Clinton Campbell House, Mr. Clinton Campbell was one of the Phoenix pioneers. Where we're standing right now, you could walk in almost every direction, pretty much get to the city limits of Phoenix. House is built roughly in 1897. The Historic Preservation Commission has said, nope, we're not going to continue an appeal because the developer has qualified for something like an economic hardship. Now, I'm not even really on the developer about it, because within rights, the developer got the place and it wasn't designated on the historical register. But the whole time, the officials in Phoenix and some preserved Phoenix people were saying, why wasn't this building designated? They are all saying the building is designated as history. You can walk about 5 to 10 minutes from this building, from where we're speaking, and see a 120-year-old piece of Phoenix history. Clinton Campbell designed the Bear Down Gym, Firestone building over here, Goodyear buildings. He was quite a prominent person and well-known in the city of Phoenix, yet we're now going to destroy his house. And why? Because somebody from the city of Phoenix is saying, or everybody's saying, it's qualified, but we never did that. City of Phoenix says, some of our city leaders are saying, well, we want to preserve some of our history. But the thing is, they kept saying during the meeting, there's 50 houses. There's only 50 left within walking distance, because think about it, and in the 1890s, Phoenix was tiny. Yet they have no list. I went to the officials yesterday. I said, don't you have a list of all the houses that are on this list that are over 100 years old? There's only 50. No, I don't know. I don't think we have a list. So, look, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody specifically, even though the mayor does appoint all the members of the Historic Preservation Commission, and thank you for your hard work. But the thing is, developers, yes, I'm very happy with what's going on with Phoenix in the center of the city. Yes, we are concerned about gentrification, but the developing is going on. I'm concerned that the historic preservation people that are employed by the city of Phoenix, you as a political leaders, have sent an unspoken message to say, hey, you can't stop every little building that Leonard Clark and these other citizens of Phoenix who want to preserve our history that they want, or we won't get the developers to come in. So therefore, they have suppressed putting a list of only roughly 50 houses that are Phoenix history together. So I ask all of my fellow citizens, as soon as you get the chance, go right across the street to 4th Avenue, because a 120-year-old piece of Phoenix history, the Clinton Campbell House, is going to be destroyed. It didn't need to be. We have many houses out there right now that are not being designated on the historical register and for Phoenix's register because, well, why? There's only 50 of them. Because the developers, they must build.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Time's up.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll be speaking again, Mayor, and you deserve a merit badge, too. Thank you.
Mr. Ward, Alan F. Ward is next, followed by Ms. Barker.
Good afternoon, one and all. Appreciate it, and I thank you for giving me the time. I'm on another issue of housing, especially for the poor. We have sanctuaries for the refugees and for the Hispanics and stuff against our federal government, but we need a coalition for the homeless, Because every time, I live in the District 8, and I've been up trying to talk to the District 8 unit quite a few times. It seems like we're looking towards and transforming into a third world nation, because we got signs on almost every corner, somebody holding a sign, whether it's a veteran, whether it's a single mother with kids or pregnancy. I know we have shelters, and I know that there's vacant properties, but we need to step up. We need to have a sanctuary, and the shelters are full, whether it's a winter or a summer. But yet, there are buildings that we can transform in the city of Phoenix into decent housing for those who don't make $2,500 a month. Now we've got investors and developers tearing down these empty buildings that can be transformed for the poor and for our city into $100,000 high-rises. And so it concerns me very much that when a person wants a housing and it costs $600 a month, that the property owner and manager says you have to have at least $2,000, 3 times as much as your monthly income, to live here, to live there, to live anywhere. That is a strenuous thing, and we need to step up and show as prime example leadership that we will not tolerate that such. I know places that's just got a paint job and they want to raise their rent $150 just because they put a new paint job on their building. We don't get a $150 bonus every time a year comes around. But we have to address the stressful issue. And I know we can, as a coalition, as a unity of Americans, we can do more than let the developers and the investors take over blank properties and empty lots to build their wonderful $100,000 sky rises, while we got people who make less than $1,000, including myself, having a hard time, can't even make ends meet. We're losing more, and it's beginning to get worse. And we need, please, to gather. And I'm more than willing to listen to any of you or gather with you guys or anyone of the audience here that wants to affiliate. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your listening, and hopefully we can move forward.
Thanks so much. Ms. Barker, Diane Barker is next, followed by Mr. Demas.
Yes, Mayor and City Council. Diane Barker, serving as a citizen in District 7. And what do we do on Wednesdays? Proof positive you're out. I've been told, and for us to get out of the problems of the world, it's going to take participation, and you are proving it. And I appreciate it, and thank you. And what do we do on Monday? Some of us did. We got out to downtown Phoenix, and I know Representative Councilman Danny Valenzuela was there, and the mayor a couple years ago to get the thing started called Fit Phoenix. We actually had people that came down. I know I didn't run, but I walked, and I went over to some air conditioning where the Y is sponsoring the kickboxing, and it was fun. And then we came back and we had raffle for Diamondback tickets, and they have beer for $2. I mean, come on, some of you probably take express buses home. You get some points for that. But you can take a later one and go out to the park on Monday, get some of those freebies, discounts on dinner, even if you aren't going to run, which could be something that, if you can handle it, would be good for you. But did you know that downtown Phoenix is cooling up? We've got a shady downtown. I'm going to give you a secret here. I know of at least 3 bars that are underground, and they're cool. One just opened up called Cornish Pastry. It's 3 levels. And so that's another exciting thing that I want to share with you about my community, which is Phoenix. Phoenix is an all-American city. I was over at MAG. The mayor was there. And it came up that, my gosh, United States back east is saying, you've got heck of a transportation system. Well, we've got to forget about all of the wrong-way drivers, I guess, and like this. But they were talking about the new express and the new transit system. I was on it yesterday. 3 buses, 2 light rails. While my friends were still in their hot car, I called them, I said, I'm on the Indian School Cool bus. I'd like to see that you would try that because the heat from your car and others is making it hard to cool down the city. So park at a park and ride. Come on downtown. I'll give you a map I'm working on that the city buildings create a shade that's 20 degrees cooler. So all this hype about everything hot, 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 let's think about what we do, the way we think, and get out and try.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Barker. Mr. Demas? Did you provide testimony? All right, next would be James Deibler.
Hello, I am James Deibler. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, in Council District 5. One that be said, we need to make sure that employers don't discriminate against people with disabilities, including autism. The small and big corporations fail to comply with Americans with Disability Act of 1990 to add wheelchair ramps and other accommodations to meet that disability community within the Phoenix metropolitan area. The city of Phoenix and the state of Arizona needs to follow the law to make the person with disability have a fair shot at the workforce. Currently, Goodwill Industries and other small businesses that pay persons with disabilities with sub-medium wage that can afford a house or apartment in the United States. We need to repeal the sub-medium wage of persons with disabilities and replace it with regular minimum wage so people with disabilities can afford a house or apartment to live in. Finally, I am a supporter for bringing new jobs into the Phoenix metropolitan area, including small and big businesses that benefit that job growth. That the United States economy is growing with new jobs each day. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deibler. I have no other cards for citizen comment at this time, so we'll move forward with the remainder of our agenda. Next on the agenda, our city clerk will read the 24-hour paragraph.
The titles of the following ordinance and numbers on the agenda were available to the public at least 24 hours prior to this council meeting and therefore may be read by title or agenda item only. Ordinances number G6331 through 6332, S43759 and S43642 through 43706, and resolutions number 21550 through 21552.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to boards and commissions. Is there a motion on mayor's boards and commission nominations?
Yes, there is a motion to approve mayor's boards and commissions nominations.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. City council board and commission nominations.
A motion to approve city council boards and commission nominations.
Second.
There is a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? That also passes unanimously. Looks like we have many citizens here to be sworn in for service, so I will come down to the floor to my right, your left, and swear in these excellent citizens. Part of the swearing in, you'll have to state your own name and obviously the particular board or commission that you're going to be serving on. It'll be really easy, I promise. All right, please raise your right hand. I, and state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of, and fill in the blank, according to the best of my ability, so help me God. You're official. Thanks for your service in advance. That's great. All right, next will be liquor license applications, but before that, the Vice Mayor has a special guest to introduce. Vice Mayor.
I have a special guest that I'm going to introduce. As in the community, there are many different things that I do, and sometimes I am an auction item. And what I mean by that is Madison Bash, the Madison School District, the Madison Bash Foundation asked if I would be willing to be part of one of the auction baskets and have lunch with a constituent within the area and show them what city government's all about. So I would like to recognize Joe Holcomb from Chase. Joe, could you please stand up because I'm going to recognize you? And so I've had the great pleasure of spending time and having lunch talking about politics. So I just wanted to recognize him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. How much did you cost? No, we don't have to answer that one. That's it, man. All right, next on the agenda is liquor license applications. Vice Mayor, is there an omnibus on liquor license applications?
Yes, move to approve items 3 through 19, except items 9, 8, 9, 18.
We have a motion. We have a second. Are there any cards in those items? Okay, so numerous cards, but all in favor of the motion that was made. Any comments by members of this council? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Let's see, item 9 is next.
Or 8.
I'm sorry, 8 and 9, and we'll take those items together because they are a mini mart and MKS Quick Stop in District 3. Councilman Stark, how would you like to proceed? Do you want to have a staff presentation?
I think we can forego that because we have quite a few speakers here, not just on liquor licenses, but on a lot of other issues. And if we could take the testimony for both 8 and 9. 8 is at 1201 West Hatcher. 9 is located at 1049 West Hatcher. So they're right in the same area. So maybe that'll help us move along as well.
Okay, so let's see. I'm going to start with the people here to speak on item 8, but if you're here to speak on both items and I call you for 8, give your testimony on both items. The first speaker is Caitlin Wright. And then the next speaker will be Jerry, is it Zaris or Zanis? Please come forward as well. And then the third speaker is Eric Lato. And then David Payment, did you wish only to speak on 9 or 8 and 9? 8 and 9, so please come forward as well, and you'll have an opportunity to speak. Ms. Wright, good to see you.
Good to see you, council members, and the mayor. First time here, very excited.
Welcome.
Thank you. I am the director of operations at Altered Tales. We're one of the largest spay and neuter clinics, a nonprofit in the community, and we are directly across from what used to be a Circle K. It is now one of the members 8 or 9 that is looking for liquor in the community, looking to apply for a liquor license. Working there for 4 years, I have seen the change and the immense, it has gotten so much better since Circle K has left that spot. We, since we're right on the corner there, we see every morning, usually, even since Circle K has left, a stream of people who are less fortunate, who don't have homes, but they spend a lot of time, and we have a lot of issues with alcohol, with creating problems in the community. So being a business and a nonprofit trying to cater to the needs of our community, we ask that we really take some time to think about what that will do to the community right there that is really struggling right now as it is.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker on 8 and 9 will be Mr. Jerry Zanis.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Jerry Zanis, and I'm the owner of Southwest Sweeper Sales, and we're located there in Hatcher Road at 11th Avenue. And I'm here to oppose the liquor license applications for items 8 and 9. And I also want to thank Councilwoman Stark for taking the time to meet with the business leaders and residents in the community. Thank you for that, regarding this important subject. I also want to thank you for accepting our petitions with over 200 residents and business owners opposed to the application, including John C. Lincoln Hospital, Honor Health currently, and the Arizona Humane Society. There's over 12 packaged liquor licenses within a square mile of that area, and I feel that we do not have a problem with access to liquor. I feel that we may have a substance abuse problem in the area. Last year, Circle K abandoned the location due to excessive inventory loss, and during the last year, there was 596 calls for service for the police and the fire department. 2 of those calls were for homicides, and they were in the local news. And in the last month alone, there have been at least 2 fires at that exact location, the one at 1049, as well as a stabbing across the street. I am a native of that community, and I've certainly been through a lot, seen a lot in the last decade, and as a longtime business owner, I have to begin to wonder if it's worth the endless hours of picking up needles, urine, and feces, dealing with petty thefts just to keep my business in the neighborhood. I humbly ask for your support in opposing those liquor licenses and helping our neighborhood flourish into the neighborhood I know it can be. We need to start somewhere. Because doing nothing is not an option. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zanis, for that important testimony. Next will be Eric Lato.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Eric Lato. I am the Community and Economic Development Director for Honor Health. I am based at the John C. Lincoln campus. Honor Health believes that Sunny Slope has great potential for both economic and neighborhood revitalization. That's why they created my position. We have invested in the community. The Desert Mission has built multiple single-family homes throughout the community, and we are currently working to add more housing on property that we own in the area. At the end of the day, what we would like is a safe environment for our patients and families that come to the John C. Lincoln campus, and we feel that less alcohol sold in the area will go a long way in doing that. And I'd like to thank Councilwoman Stark for all the efforts she's put into the neighborhood and working with our organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much. David Payment.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is David Payment. I'm the Facilities and Maintenance Manager for the Arizona Humane Society. We have operated in this location since 1957, so we're celebrating our 60th year this year. It's been a struggle to be in this area because of the homeless and the transient in the area. Daily, as the others point out, we do deal with the fact that we have quite a few instances of drunk people that get into our business or sleep around our business and do kind of deter the point of what we're doing there to bring the public to be able to help our shelter place animals in loving and nice homes. So it is something that with the opposition to the liquor license being applied for, the Circle K, when it closed, did actually improve the area from the point that we had less that we noticed in the area. I call the police, on a daily basis for issues that we have, so it's something that I have seen improve. So we are asking that this, as the others have pointed out, that it's something that doesn't seem to be needed in the area. So we do ask that this license not be approved. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. That's all the cards for speaking that I have on this item. I have two cards indicating people not wishing to speak. Andrea Sobchak opposed to the item, and then Mr. Waldemichael is the applicant in favor, not wishing to speak, at least on the applicant on item number 8. Did you wish to speak? You get it on the record or no? Okay, otherwise it'll be reflected. Okay. Oh, we have another card here. Please come forward as reasonably swiftly as possible. Could someone please get the card from her? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. You did a white card, but that's fine now. Ms. Sobchak, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for your time. I work with Honor Health. I volunteer with the Sunny Slope Village Alliance and the East Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association and Block Watch, and anything that we can do to help make our area safe, District 3. With, like they said, we've got enough liquor stores. We have an issue with the transients. Anything that we can do that's going to take us a step in the right direction would be most appreciated. If they want to open a mini mart for food, wonderful, just not the liquor.
Thanks so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll now hand it over to Councilwoman Stark to see if she has any questions or a motion.
No, I don't have any questions, but I do have a motion. So on item 8, I would like to make a motion for disapproval based on neighborhood protest and based on concerns with the location. As you've heard today, this is a challenged area with high crime rates, and there's sufficient liquor licenses in the area already to meet the neighborhood needs. Issuing this liquor license is not in the best interest of the community at this time. That's why I'm making the motion for disapproval of the liquor license.
All right, the motion is to disapprove on item 8. Is there a second? Second. There's a second. Are there any comments from members of this council? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, Councilman Waring, are you on the phone?
Yes. Did you hear my yes?
No.
We did not hear it. So did you wish to vote yes for the disapproval on item 8?
Yes, I disapprove of item 8.
Okay, so that passed, the disapproval passes unanimously. Item number 9, Councilwoman Stark.
Yes, I would like to make a motion for disapproval on this item as well, based on neighborhood protest and based on the concerns with the location. And just for the record, again, this is a challenge area with high crime rates, and there are sufficient liquor licenses in the area already to meet the neighborhood needs. Issuing this liquor license is not in the best interest of the community at this time, and therefore I make my motion for disapproval of this liquor license.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Are there any additional comments or questions from members of this council? Roll call.
DeCiccio. Yes. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, so the motion for disapproval on item 9 passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item number 18. Item number 18 is a proposed liquor license in District 8. Councilmember Gallego, how would you like to proceed?
Like to hear from the applicant.
Is the applicant present? Do we have cards on item 18?
Thank you.
Yeah, we're both the applicants.
You're both the applicants, okay. All right, Councilman, do you want them to make it whatever
They
statement?
have a
Please.
statement.
Please.
They've been working with our office.
Yes, Mayor and council members. We're happy to be in the
Just state your
opening our
name for the
business in
record
this
first,
area.
please.
I'm sorry?
State your names for the record.
Oh, Charles Davenport.
I'm Jennifer Davenport. We put in the application for the liquor license with the intention of, you can't hear me, I'm sorry. I apologize. My name's Jennifer Davenport. We put in the application for the liquor license with the intention of craft beer and craft wine in our store. We've actually been working with Councilwoman in District 8 to, we're going to be changing the name, so it's all in process. Our goal is, like I said, craft beer, craft wine. We have no interest in we have interest in like the local manufacturers and the specialty items. And we are also working on making a lot of changes with the store. We just started March 1st, and it's in process. It's a really nice process. I think it's going to turn out really beautiful, and I think it's going to be really good for the local residents who actually kind of like that stuff because it's local, you know, it's all kind of, it's very neighborly. But I'm here for any questions. We're both here for any questions.
And what will the new name be?
It's going to be Hobbs Local Market, and it's going to be designed like a P, so that way it'll be Hobbs kind of Local Market also. I have both domains, so that way we can, because it's a transition, because we're changing the name, and that's a little scary. So we're working towards that. But I've already put in the application for the change of name, and as soon as they give me the approval, then I'll go and change all of the, you know.
Signage and et cetera.
Well, and we're working on the signage ahead of time anyway, so.
Yeah. Thank you so much for working with our office too, and some of the folks in the neighborhood. It's the gateway area of our city, and I think local craft will also welcome our visitors in addition to our great residents. So with that, I move approval.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. Any additional comments or questions from members of this council? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, so there was one no. So by a vote of 8-1, the motion passes. Next item on the agenda is ordinances, resolutions, new business, planning, and zoning. Vice Mayor, is there an omnibus motion ready?
Yes. Motion to approve items 20 through 128, except the following. Items 29, 41, 48 through 54, 66, 68, 75, 77, 81 through 84, 88, 94, 96, 114, and 117, 127, and 128. Item 69 has been continued to June 28, 2017, and item 71 has been continued to July 6, 2017, and excluding these items for public comment, but I don't have anything. I'm fine, right? Okay, thank you.
All right, that's the omnibus motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any additional items that members of the council would like to pull for its own hearing? Our city attorney?
Mayor, number 96, was that excluded from the omnibus motion?
You want it to be excluded?
It was continued?
Mayor, there's a request to continue 96 to July 6 from staff.
Okay. That's 96. That'll be included in the omnibus proposal.
Thank you.
All right. Any other items that anybody wants to pull? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Aye.
I apologize. Roll call.
DeCiccio. Gallego.
Yes.
Noakowski.
Yes.
Stark. Valenzuela. Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, that item, or those items pass unanimously. Next on the agenda is item 29, it appears. Is there a motion on item 29?
Move approval.
There's a motion. Is there a second on item 29? Where is the
Second.
mo-
There's a motion on item 29.
All right. You pulled- okay. Okay. So there's a motion in favor of 29. There's a second. Diane Brossart from Arizona Forward is here in favor of the item, available to speak if requested. I don't know, Diane, if you want to provide testimony, if anybody wants to call her forward. Is there a question?
We reviewed this item at subcommittee, and subcommittee supported it.
There's a question about, I think, whether the correct item was pulled or not. Just a moment. Oh, I see. Okay, now, okay. So we're okay to vote on it? Okay. So the motion is in favor of 29. There is a second. Diane Brossart can breathe easy at this point. Roll call.
DeCiccio. Gallego.
Yes.
Noakowski.
No.
Stark. Valenzuela. Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, so that item passes 6-3. 7-2. What did you remember? Voted yes. Okay. 7-2, that item passes. Next item on the agenda is item 41. Is there a motion on item 41?
Mayor,
Councilman.
there's potential conflict. I'm not going to vote on this one.
All right, so Councilman Valenzuela has a potential conflict and will not be participating. Is there a motion on 41?
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any cards on that item? Any comments by members of this council?
Just a quick one, Mayor.
Councilman, please.
I support Luke, Air Force Base, but the hiring of a consultant or a lobbyist on that just does not make economic sense to me. It's something that the council could do, especially when you have people like Senator McCain and others that are strong proponents of that. That's the level that it needs to be at. That's something we can do on our own. Again, I support Luke, but I don't support spending monies unnecessarily. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman DeCiccio. Councilwoman Williams, please.
Thank you. This is the last year of a 10-year contract. This agency has worked very closely with Senator McCain and our other representatives. They were successful in getting the F-35 at Luke, and they continue to look for new training opportunities. They are a big supporter of Luke and the military and all the agencies. We have 4 different countries out there training with the F-35, and we can be very proud, and I will tell you, it brings a lot of revenue into the city of Phoenix, so I'm full support of this. So last year, it'll go out for bid. It is managed by the city of Glendale. All the Western Valley cities are a member of this committee and are supporters of this.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments by members of this council? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
No.
Gallego.
Yes.
Noakowski.
Yes.
Stark. Waring.
No.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, so that item passes 7-2 before the city council. Next item on the agenda, 6-3?
6-2.
6-2, I apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm sorry, 6-2, I apologize. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 48. We have a motion on item 48.
It's a public.
Oh, but, I'm sorry, we have the budget hearing. Just a moment. We're now on item 48 before the City Council. Item 48 is a public hearing on adoption of the final 2017-18 budget and on the truth in taxation and proposed property tax levy scheduled for council action on July 6, 2017. I now declare the hearing open. Are there cards on item 48? All right. Is anyone here in the audience wishing to speak on item number 48? Going once, going twice. The public hearing is now closed. There's no vote on that item, so we're now moving on to item 49. Item 49 is the convening of a special meeting of the City Council to consider adoption of the 2017-18 budget. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, in accordance with the state statute, I move that the regular meeting of the City Council be recessed and the City Council convene a special meeting to consider adoption of the budget.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, that item passes, and now we'll be in the convening of the special meeting. Item 50 is what we're on now. Item 50 is the adoption of the final 2017-18 annual operating funds budget. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I move that item 50 being I'm not reading right. Being ordinance S-43-65-3, the final 2017-2018 annual operating funds budget be adopted.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Oh, Mayor, may I give just a couple quick
Councilmember,
comments?
please.
And these follow the same comments that I've had in the past about the budget in the city of Phoenix and why I have a problem with the way the budget's set up. There are obviously some important things in the budget, but if you look at the budget itself, it has a structural deficit. Why the city of Phoenix, think about this, has a deficit year after year after year is because of the way the budget is set up. The city of Phoenix is experiencing more revenue than it's ever has in its history, and it still has a budget deficit this year. A lot of it deals with the fact because the city of Phoenix spends money on things that are unnecessary, things like public relations, lobbying, membership dues, things like that. I mean, even though that's $5 million, those things add up. It's a lack of prioritization on those functions that are strategic, and those functions that are not strategic, we either find a way to do them somewhere else or we find a way not to do that. It's a simple thing that I've been asking probably for several years now, that we maintain and go forward with a strategic plan that looks at every function, rank orders every function we do in government from top to bottom, and then you make the decisions of what are important and what's not. Obviously, police are important, and when you look at the police officers, we're short police officers, you would restructure those functions that are least important and put the funding at the very top. The way we do it now does not work like that, and you're going to continue to see these budget deficits year after year, and you're going to see the addition of debt. You're going to see the addition where it's going to eventually come down and way down. This is what happened in other places around the country. If you don't function, if you don't look at your strategic functions and look at funding those and finding ways to do things fiscally responsible, you're going to have a problem. Thank you, Mayor, but I'm going to be voting no on this, even though there are some good things in there and there are some things I don't like. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor?
Councilman Williams, please.
I have a question of the city manager because I've had several phone calls. Are we changing the property tax rate at all?
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, the property tax rate in this budget goes from $2.17 per hundred to $2.16 per hundred. So the rate drops by a penny.
Mayor, may I follow up on that?
Councilman Cicio, please.
Not trying to be disrespectful, but last year the city of Phoenix rate was $1.82. Then it was raised to $2.17, and it dropped 1 penny. So the real rate is from $1.82 to $1.86 this year. Just because they said it was supposed to be $2.17 last year doesn't mean that it's so. So the real rate increase from last year's budget's from $1.82 to $2.16 today. That's the rate increase, and it's significant. It's the largest property tax increase in the city of Phoenix history occurred last year. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments by members of the council? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
No.
Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Stark. Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
No.
Williams.
I'm going to support this, but I really question whether that's a true statement or not.
Yeah, I would like to understand that statement.
Yeah.
Because that was not my understanding last year.
So as I understand the statement you're questioning, it's whether we raise the property tax rate from $1.82 to $2.16? No, the property tax rate last year was $2.17. This year, $2.70. Next year, it's $2.16. 2 years ago, it was $1.82. I don't believe that was the largest increase. I think that happened in the late 2000s. And the property tax levy is actually less this next year than it was in 2011.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pastor.
Wait, quick. Oh, sorry. Councilman Williams, did you get her? Did she vote? Okay, she did vote. I apologize. Okay, that was yes. Okay.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes. So the vote is 7-2 in favor. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is item 51. Item 51 is the adoption of the final 2017-18 capital funds budget. Vice Mayor, do I have a motion on 51?
Mayor, I move that item 51 being ordinance S-43667, the final 2017-2018 capital funds budget be adopted.
There's a motion. There is a second. Any comments by members of the City Council? Roll call.
DeCiccio. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Stark. Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
No.
Williams. Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, that item passes 8-1 before the City Council. Next item is 52. Item 52 is the adoption of the final 2017-18 reappropriated funds budget. Vice Mayor, is there a motion on 52?
Mayor, I move that item 52 being ordinance S-43654, the final 2017-2018 reappropriated funds budget be adopted.
Mayor, I'll second that, but I'd ask the city manager to explain what reappropriated funds are for the audience.
Mayor, Councilman Williams, actually our budget director, Jeff Williams, is the best one to explain that, so I'll turn it to Jeff.
Mr. Barton?
Mayor, members of the council, the reappropriated funds budget is essentially taking funds that were appropriated in the current fiscal year, for example, a contract that was budgeted this fiscal year that did not entirely get executed, and we still have remaining and outstanding payments on that contract to be paid. It allows us to take those dollars and the appropriation authority to roll those forward so we can continue to pay those bills in fiscal year 17-18.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion in favor of 52.
Mayor,
We have a second. Councilman DeCiccio, please.
Just want to make sure that I know what the reappropriated budget is, and for the public, these are commitments that the city's already made a commitment to. They've entered into contracts, and it's to pay those contracts. Could be for pencils, could be for anything, but it's those contracts moving forward. So I'm going to be voting yes on this, Mayor. These are commitments that the city's already made.
All right, thank you very much.
Mayor, can I say something?
Yes, you may. Councilman Waring, please.
Yes, just one point. This has nothing to do, right, Ed and Jeff, with the budget going forward. This is looking backwards, and as the other guy said, paying our bills.
That is correct, Councilman. So this is this year's budget, the 16-17 budget, and the dollars that we had allocated for individual contracts, as Councilman DeCiccio referenced, and allowing us to continue to pay those bills next fiscal year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Stark.
Yes.
Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, that item passes unanimously. Next, we're on to item 53.
Mayor.
Is that correct, Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I move the city council adjourn the special meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn and go back into regular session. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, our special meeting is adjourned, so I hereby declare that the special meeting is concluded. And now let's reconvene in regular city council meeting. Items 53 and 54 are legally required amendments to the current 2016-17 budget, allowing the city to close out the current fiscal year's budgetary accounts and proceed with the annual independent audit. Item 53 we'll begin with. Item 53 amends the 2016-17 annual operating funds budget to authorize reallocating appropriations. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I move that item 53 being ordinance S-43651, the required reallocation of the 2016-2017 operating budget appropriation be adopted.
Second. A motion and a second. Ms. Barker, did you provide testimony on this item?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Diane Barker, District 7. This has to do with operating budget, and I just want to make a firm statement. I don't like to see the operating budget being increased. We're living in times where we've hired a sustainability specialist. For one, the electric costs I've seen going up through the years, and when I see statements from people, they say it's so bloody hot outside at 121, but when I go to work, I have to wear a jacket. I ask you, the city, in your good conscience, are you doing that? And why aren't we looking at all areas every day to work better and a little leaner?
Thank you so very much. Any additional comments? All right. Item 53, roll call.
DeCiccio.
No.
Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Stark. Valenzuela. Waring.
No.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, so that item passes 7-2. Next item is 54. Item 54 amends the 2016-17 annual reappropriated funds budget to authorize reallocating appropriations. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I move the item 54 being ordinance S-43650, the required reallocation of the 2016-2017 reappropriated funds budget appropriations be adopted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any cards on the item? Any members of the council have any comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Stark. Valenzuela. Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, that item passed 9-0. All right, next we're going to move on with the remainder of our agenda. Next item on the agenda is item 66.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second on item 66. We have a couple cards on that. Ms. Barker, did you provide testimony? Followed by Mr. Leonard Clark.
Okay, Mayor and City Council, Diane Barker, District 7. This is an authorization for our law department to disperse funds in almost $17 million for 2018 to 2019. And it's for outside counsel as an as-needed basis. Now, where I'm going with all of this is the same thing I said at the Board of Supervisors today, is that they had also applied new law firms that they're taking on. We have a voluminous list of law firms. I imagine that they have qualified them. They have their LLB. Litigation is lengthy. It destroys relationships. Many times it's more about procedure and billing and giving attorney fees. Many times due process is robbed. You do not even get a hearing. Many times it is of the powerful that have an attorneys, that have relationships. It's the same thing. You're too big to fail. We have this in the United States, in our banking systems, in our litigation, and on our attorneys, and it's time that we start using more mediation. You've authorized this money. I'm asking you, there should be a sign as soon as you get off the 13th floor, mediation here, to look to see when they make a claim, which is needed to do before you go to sue government, and you let them know how it could be settled in a less costly manner, that at that time it would be looked to have in-house mediation. And certainly when there are people that are poor, they cannot afford an attorney, and there's not enough pro bono out there, that we look to preserve people and not be a cause for the increasing rich against the poor in the United States.
Thanks so much. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. My name is Leonard Clark. I wish I had millions of dollars every time I got in trouble with the law, but you see, that's why I'm against this. You guys get to go out and hire private attorneys. I'm not even sure how it's going to be broken down. In this age when we're all cynical, because our officials with Citizens United get untold amounts of money, now you're going to approve getting yourselves private legal counsel. You know what happens to Leonard Clark or other citizens who aren't in government when we get in trouble? We get thrown in the slammer. And to get justice in this country, in this state, in this county, Maricopa County, where the judges won't even listen to you if you're a normal peasant such as I, but I guess maybe I should get elected and I should get into government, and then I get all the free millions of dollars for free attorneys. The system of justice is represented by your decision right now, and you'll vote for it. Is wrong to give out all this money to these private attorneys. They don't care about us, the regular citizens. So I ask you this, and I know you'll do this. Please, you should be totally accountable, as it was in the United States Army. You know, when supply all the supplies. I want to know as a citizen, and all the Phoenix citizens should know, every penny you pay every lawyer to defend you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think we do have that on our website in terms of every check that is spent by the city of Phoenix, including for out of our legal department for outside counsel. So I think that opportunity for Mr. Clark to find that would be easily accessible.
That's right, Mayor.
Okay, thank you so much. We have a motion and a second on item 66. Vice Mayor?
When we hire outside legal counsel, I know we hire outside legal counsel for our FAA fight right now. Could you give me, other than the FAA fight, can you give me other reasons why we hire outside counsel?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Pastor, yes, there are several reasons. First, we sometimes don't have the expertise to handle a case in-house. You point out the flight path case. That's one where we don't have an aviation lawyer to handle it. There are certain other kinds of very narrow federal, state, and other kinds of unique areas of the law where, again, we don't have that expertise in-house. Number two, sometimes the size of the case requires a commitment of resources that we don't have in-house to the nature of the case. So we have, for example, some officer-involved shooting cases that are complex and require us to supply lawyers for 3 or 4 police officers plus the city, so we have to have 4 different law firms involved. So the complexity and size of the case also may require the hiring of outside counsel. Those are the general reasons.
Thank you.
Any other questions by members of this council? Roll call.
DeCiccio. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Stark. Yes. Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
No.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, so the item passes 8-1 before this city council. All right, next item on the agenda is item number 68. Item 68 is the action item today. We did have a policy hearing on this, I guess it was last week, so the city management had a chance to explain why they're making this recommendation. But I'll first hand it over to our city manager to find out any additional information you'd like to provide to this council and the public. There are many cards here on this item, so I propose that we have our city manager and his team have a chance to propose before this city council. turn to members of the public on comments or questions that they may have, and I'll at that point turn to members of the City Council. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Mayor, as you said last Tuesday, the council had an excellent discussion about the amortization period for a public safety pension retirement system, which we talk about as PSPRS, the pension obligations for our police officers and firefighters. We have a unique opportunity, as we talked about today, because of legislation signed by Governor Ducey so that we can take an action today that affects the fiscal year starting July 1. As staff, we recommend an option that extends the amortization period of our pension liability to 30 years to give budget relief and flexibility, but it also leaves the city the freedom to pay the liability down sooner. The reality is that our public safety pension obligation is weighing heavily on our budget and on our credit rating. As staff, we're trying to find ways to give room to continue to pay our retirement obligations to our police officers and firefighters and provide services to our residents. Since last week, Councilman DeCiccio has talked to me and the Chief Financial Officer, Denise Olson, about the possibility of taking out a loan or pension obligation bonds to retire our liability at a lower rate. Denise, our Chief Financial Officer, has been assessing debt options for a couple of years, and we know this is a complex issue that deserves review and inquiry. So I'd suggest that in pursuing that idea, we would suggest a session for the full council in the fall to discuss the research that Denise is doing, information she's accumulating over the summer about the implications, opportunities, and risks of taking on a fixed pension debt like a loan in place of the pension liability, but it is certainly something we are reviewing. So now Jeff Barton, our budget director, and Denise Olson are here with 6 quick slides to review last week's discussion and highlight our recommendation. Jeff?
Mayor, members of the council, as the city manager mentioned in his opening remarks, we are here today because of the pressure that the general fund budget has been experiencing as a result of our public safety pension. And as you can see from this slide, going back to fiscal year 06-07, we paid roughly $56 million in PSPRS, or our public safety pension related costs, out of the general fund. That increased by about 168% to the current fiscal year. We're paying roughly $150 million. It's expected that next year, based on the rates that were disclosed to us by the PSPRS board and the PSPRS plan, that cost would go up to about $207 million next year, a 40% increase. We expect those costs to increase even more over the next couple of years based on our 5-year forecast, going up to about $235 million in fiscal year 21-22. We're here today because, again, based on Senate Bill 1442 that was signed by Governor Ducey back on April 17th, and the intent of that legislation that he signed was to alleviate some of that rising pension pressure that you saw on the previous slide, not just from Phoenix, but other municipalities across the state are also experiencing that pressure. You know, we talked last week about our rates that we would be paying next year at 67% for police and 63% for fire. There are municipalities throughout the state that are paying rates even significantly higher than that, even into the 104% range. So again, we are not alone, and that's why this bill was signed by Governor Ducey. It permits cities and towns to change their amortization period from a closed 20-year period to a closed 30-year period. Again, on May 18th, they were also signed an emergency clause that was attached to 2485, which allowed us to choose this for the current fiscal year that we're getting ready to enter into, July 1st, 2017. But we must present that recommendation to the PSPRS board before their last meeting of June. That is June 28th, and that's why we're here today. To put this into context, the reason we're discussing this, because as we've talked, fiscal year 18-19, we have a potential shortfall of between $64 and $43 million. By taking this action or looking at this as an option, we already know that 17-18 budget is balanced, excuse me. We just adopted that just a few moments ago. But again, this option would create additional budgetary flexibility within the PSPRS rate. This takes us from a 30-year or 20-year close period to a 30-year close period, and based on our analysis, we think it saves us between $30 and $35 million in the first fiscal year, being next year, 17-18, and potentially $10 to $15 million in fiscal year 18-19. We would use that money in the first year to create and establish a pension reserve fund. That pension reserve fund would be exclusively used for the sole purpose of paying pension and dealing with pension-related increases and expenses over the next few years. And again, we will continue, as we always do, look at our administrative costs and all of our costs to try and control those. As we've discussed over the last couple of months and into the budget process, when we look at our general fund budget, isolating pension out, our costs are down about $100 million compared to 07-08 when you exclude pension. We will continue to do that work over the summer and into the fall and bring that work back into you when we start talking about the budget development process for fiscal year 18-19. And finally, we will continue to review our programs and services in this fall and winter, looking again to leverage some of that information into our development of the 18-19 fiscal year budget so that we can hopefully find a way to balance that budget. But that would also include reviewing not just our programs and services, but also including a review of our revenues. And with that, I'll turn it over to Denise Olson, who will pick up from there.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. So what staff is recommending is that we set the annual required contribution rate at a minimum based on a 30-year amortization schedule starting in fiscal year 17-18. A 25-year amortization schedule will be used when we contemplate the budget for 18-19 this fall. This also allows us to establish a pension reserve fund for additional assurances, and it stabilizes services and sustains programs while maintaining over 3,000 police officers and 1,600 firefighters. It allows flexibility during an economic downturn, and again, this is a closed amortization period, so the unfunded accrued liability is 100% paid at the end of the period. So staff did due diligence with other systems, and we found a survey that looked at 154 pension plans, of which 40% had amortization periods of 30 years. This includes ASRS and also police and fire pension funds in the state of California, Texas, Ohio, and several large cities. So the impacts. It's a little, sorry for the, I'll go ahead and slip there. So the impacts are, there is a credit risk due to the overall pension cost, regardless of the amortization schedule. As Jeff showed you in that chart, our pension costs continue to increase more than our revenues. If we go this route, we will be paying more in interest costs. It's an additional $1.1 billion for 25 years and $2.3 billion for 30 years. However, on an annual basis, this does provide more flexibility because it reduces our annual fixed cost. It also adds reserves to pay more on PSPRS, and it absorbs unexpected increases in PSPRS because it establishes a reserve fund. So those are the impacts of this recommendation. And with that, we'd be happy to answer questions.
Mayor, I would just say there are a few other, I'm aware of some fire districts that have done this, but I also know that last week the city of Mesa adopted almost identically the same, which is adopted a 30-year amortization rate for the PSPRS funds in Mesa with an intention to pay 25 years.
All right, we'll now turn to members of the public who came to provide comments on this item. Our first speaker will be Mr. Tom Jenny, followed by Michael Meacham. Either one, either one.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Jenny, I am the Arizona Director of Americans for, actually I was the Arizona Director of Americans for Prosperity. We just switched. I'm now the Senior Legislative Advisor. Glad to be here. We would recommend that you not do this. This, we believe, is kicking the can down the road. And in return for getting a little bit more flexibility in your current budget, you're pushing higher pension payments off to the far end of the schedule. We think that's not a great idea. As far as alternatives, we're not 100% certain that we like going to general obligation pension debt as a substitute, but that's a thing to look, that's a possibility to look at. We think the big deal here is that we have a giant pension obligation that we have to pay no matter what. It's going to happen, unless somehow the city defaults someday in the future, which is possible. It has happened in cities close to this big before. But I think one of the biggest things we need to do is bite the bullet and recognize we have a giant cost out there that has to be paid. And we should try to start being responsible in this generation rather than passing this on to our kids and grandkids. So we could start off, for one thing, by trying to pay down PSPRS based on a return rate, a more realistic return rate of 5%, something like that, rather than what they're currently projecting, which is pretty absurdly high given market returns. So our feeling is that we ought to, as a city, ought to bite the bullet on this one, and we ought to cut some current costs, cut some services, find a lot of waste. I know a lot of us are looking at waste in the city budget. Find a lot of waste and reduce our current expenditures now to take on that pension, to start paying down that pension debt obligation right now, instead of kicking it to the future.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your testimony. Thank you very much. Mr. Michael Meacham, followed by Marvin Jones.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Michael Meacham. I am an elected precinct committeeman from Trevor Brown Precinct and Legislative District number 29. First, let me say that there's something inherently wrong with a system where public employees, that's yourselves, feel that you deserve better protection than the people who hired you, which is these people here. And yes, I'm referring specifically to your metal detectors. When the government does not trust its citizens, it's time for the citizens to change that government. Now, as to why we're here today, your budget is completely out of whack. You should throw it away in the garbage can and start over because your priorities are just out of order. Why do people come together and form a city? They want to improve their lives. They want to improve protection and security. The single number one most important service that any city can provide is fire protection and emergency medical assistance. That's something that people's lives depend on, and it is something that they generally cannot provide for themselves. When I moved to Phoenix, we had a 2-minute response time. I don't think it's that good anymore. But we need to fully fund the fire department, including the pension, as the number one single priority in the city of Phoenix before anything else. And if the only thing we could pay for is the fire department and its pension, then that's what we should do. But I'm sure we have more money than that. Now, the second most important thing is police, and to a lesser extent, the courts. When seconds count, the police are only minutes away. Sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes a couple of hours. Okay, fortunately in Arizona, we have enough people who can protect themselves, at least in the short term, that it's not as critical as the fire is. But it's still a high priority, and it's something that we should be taking care of. We should have full strength in our police department, and we should be restoring all the people that we have lost to retirement and so forth. The third priority is water, wastewater, and sanitation, as in garbage. These three things are the most important functions of any city, and we need those first before anything else. You need to pay for these things and then spend money on the other things, such as teachers, streets and traffic, and parks and rec.
Thank you for your testimony.
Okay.
Appreciate you coming down.
Okay,
The next speaker will be Mr. Wesley Harris, followed by Keith Broadwater.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, I'm Wes Harris. I live in North Phoenix. No one has more regard for Denise Olson than I do, but I think she errs in this case because we are, in effect, financing debt with debt. But the federal government's doing that, and it's killing us, and now the state has passed a law that says you can do the same thing, and it's kind of interesting that you would jump on that bandwagon when you don't jump on the other bandwagons like centralizing our elections in November, just to make one point. Debt with debt, past efforts to control pensions have been defeated over and over and over again. We're never going to fix this thing. The day that this particular 2-year or 20-year amortization was signed, it was already obsolete because anybody knows anything about actuarial analysis, you change one little thing. There's so many variables in it that if you change one little thing, the whole thing is is no longer valid. And that's not going to change. And you can amortize this over 30 years. The minute this one is dry, it's already obsolete, and it'll continue to be obsolete based on that little chart there. Got to go back to finding out what the heck is wrong with this thing, and that is the pension costs themselves and the other costs that you're paying. When the city was a charter city, it had core responsibilities. You've lost track of all of that. You've added a ton of things that we don't need. The previous gentleman talked about our basic responsibilities, and that being police and fire protection, streets, garbage, water. Water I'm very sensitive about. And those are your core things. Everything else you're doing is not core. If you're going to jettison things, jettison those things and concentrate on the things that are your core responsibilities. You're not really talking about the impact of financing debt with debt. You're doubling, tripling, quadrupling the cost of the item. When you go and refinance, you know, everybody's getting inundated with requests to refinance their houses, and you can use that money to buy this, and you can use that money to buy that. What they're not talking about is all the money you have to spend down the road to afford those things, but you do have a new car. So let's be fiscally responsible. That's where you belong. It's our money you're dealing with here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Next will be Keith Broadwater, followed by Maureen Bayardi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Keith Broadwater, and I live in Moon Valley, Legislative District 20, Canterbury Precinct, Mr. Stark. And I stand here today in opposition to this incredible increase in the debt limit for item 68 on the agenda. I feel, like Mr. Jenny said, kicking this down the road 30 years, I say that none of you have the moral authority to look that far into the future and mortgage my children's children and to shackle them with that debt. And it does need to be dealt with now, and you may have the votes, and I know you do, 7-2, just like everything else is passed 7-2. And the two that will vote against it, and then it'll be 7. And 30 years at 7.4%, that's mafia money. 7.4% is what I have found out is what you're going to be paying. Nobody pays 7.4%. And I think the final payment is like $450 million. And we don't have these kind of funds here in the city. If you went to your constituents, each one of you went to your constituents and asked them, which you haven't done, if you went to them and asked them, would you vote for this? You wouldn't get a yes. Probably from anybody. And then if you asked your constituents who put you there in your place, if you asked them, if I had one vote to keep my position here, you would all be voted out of office. 30 years at 7.4, 2.3 billion or $3 billion. My grandchildren should not be shackled with this debt, and you should not mortgage the future of our kids in this city. And you're going to vote for it just because you can. But I say just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, City Council.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your testimony. Maureen Bayardi is next, followed by Amy Rigler.
I'm not high enough.
There you go.
My name is Maureen Bayardi. I live in Phoenix. I'm in District 1. I am absolutely, adamantly opposed to this. To take and mortgage ourselves for another 10 years. Early on, the gentleman over here, just one of the numbers that I wrote down, is in a 25-year period, we will be paying more than $1.1 billion, with a B, dollars. I'm sorry, But when we have a bill to pay, if we don't pay it in a timely fashion, we're going to be paying more and more and more. Probably everybody in this room has a credit card. The bill comes and it tells you, if you pay this in so many, $35 a month for 30 years, it's going to cost you X. So what this automobile, whatever it is that you buy, you start out at $20,000 and the damn thing's gonna cost you $50,000. Now, I can't look at each one of you in the eye, or I'd like you to look at me in the eye and say that that's the right thing, because it is not the right thing. And just like Mr. Broadwater said, are we going to mortgage our children and our grandchildren? We've done it over and over and over again. And it is wrong. In capital letters, wrong. And I think that you people need to take a look into your hearts and say, am I going to do the right thing or the wrong thing? Thank you for listening to me, and do the right thing.
Thanks so much. Ms. Rigler?
Mayor, council members, for the record, my name is Amy Rigler. I represent an organization called the Arizona Free Enterprise Clubs. We do statewide policy work. We also focus on issues of government accountability like the one before you today. I know each and one of you care about the community and the citizens within it. Part of your stewardship, as mentioned before, does involve not just looking to the care of the citizens today, but the care of the citizens tomorrow as well. Extending the amortization schedule by a decade is a short-term play that, even if you believe can add limited benefit to your citizens today, will have significant and far greater long-term costs and consequences for those citizens in the future. I can understand the immediate allure of freeing up cash flow, but you are purchasing $50 million today with $2.3 billion from tomorrow, and tomorrow's dollars are always more expensive. We think this is a bad idea. It's certainly a costly one. Aside from the foreseeable hard costs, there are unforeseeable costs as well. An additional 10 years is also a decade of liabilities exposed to markets none of us can predict. Certainly, there's a tremendous risk that 10 years will produce less than anticipated in assumed returns, especially if these assumed returns are not conservative, as my colleague Mr. Jenny mentioned. This will only further increase these debts. The wiser consideration would, of course, be a discussion of how this body and this community could pay off these debts sooner, not putting it off for even later, as well as curbing spending. Understanding this would, at least in the short, be unpleasant, uncomfortable, but also understanding this has been the displacement and prolongment of this discomfort that has created and amplified it in the present. The wiser decision today would to be, like was mentioned before, not simply kick the can down the road. In some ways, we seem to be getting more and more immune to the concept of debt burdens. Decades of mind-boggling federal debts that seem to just increase exponentially have softened our aversions and lured us into a false sense of immunity. But these are not sustainable practices, and the effects of this inversion of sound financial principle will be felt much sooner in the city of Phoenix than the federal government, who can print their way out of dealing with hard decisions in the immediate future. I'd just like to take one more note, look at the state of Illinois and the crippling financial situation they find themselves in today. I would argue that this is not a decision that has, not one decision that you can isolate that put them in there, but a series of decisions like the very one that you face today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rigler, for that testimony. Is he also opposed to the proposal? Not wishing to speak, Vera Anderson, Russell Osborne, Brenda Ray, Matt Miller, and Robert Standard, I believe, Senior. I apologize if I mispronounced, but it'll be noted for the record. Let's see, Mr. Clark, did you provide testimony? You indicated you're neutral on this item? Oh, did you want to speak on this item? Are you opposed to the item?
You had called my name, Marvin Jones, like 3 or 4 speakers.
Come forward. I apologize. Now's the time. Come forward and provide any testimony you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Resident of Phoenix, name again, Marvin Jones, retired from industry, private industry. Any fiscally responsible organization pays down their obligations as soon as they can, depending upon their revenue streams. Your revenue streams are primarily taxes and fees. That's where we come in. This is a bad ordinance when you start stretching out payments in order to pay more interest on your obligations. So I recommend a no vote on this one. During the discussion of item 50, I believe it was, the general budget there, several items of fluff were mentioned that were not necessary. Eliminate some of the fluff, pay your obligations. Don't extend this. The comment was made that maybe next year, year after next, you could negotiate for a lower interest rate. By all means, do that. I'm for that, but I'm not for extending this payment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Jones. Let's see, there is one speaker wanting to speak in favor of the proposal, Mr. Ken Crane, President of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association. President Crane, good to see you. Mr. Crane, one of the previous speakers indicated that fire was a higher priority than police. I don't know if you wanted to specifically address that.
Well, yeah. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you. Appreciate being here. There's one thing I think all of us in this room can agree on, and that is having debt sucks, okay? Whether it's a note on your car, a note on your house, or a couple of $1 billion in pension debt. Our association looked at this long and hard, and we're kind of, I'll be honest, we're torn on this because I hear what a lot of people are saying about kicking the can down the road, and that's what we are doing. But we do support re-amortizing to the 30-year, from a 20 to 30 year. It's a yin and a yang. There's an upside and a downside. We realize that by doing this, we are going to incur extra interest debt. We also realize it will give the city some financial breathing room. As a president of an association, I routinely come and beat up on the council about manpower and staffing. And all I ever hear is we can't afford it and how expensive cops and firefighters are. So that's part of the reason we're backing this. We desperately need manpower out on the street. The fire does, police do. I got guys running without backups. I have guys telling me stories about taking 20 minutes to get to family fights in progress, hot calls in progress out there. So we're getting screwed and the citizens are getting screwed on this. So here's what I would say. Tied to our support, we would strongly encourage the council to think out of the box and seek outside financing options on this to get a much lower interest rate to try to pay this debt off. And I think with much lower interest rates, if we can secure that, we can, over the course of this note, we can save literally, we can save many hundreds of millions on principal and interest payments. So that's what I would leave you with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Crane, for your testimony. Councilman Nowakowski, do you have a question?
I have a question. You know, they talked about 7.4 interest rate. Where'd that come about? Or is that the true interest rate that?
Ms. Olson, I don't know if you're the one to answer that question about issues of interest rates as it relates to PSPRS.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The 7.4 discount rate is what PSPRS is moving towards, I believe, next fiscal year.
And are we bound to that rate, or can we look at an outside bank or loaning institution for a lower rate?
So the 7.4 rate is the rate of return. So that's what PSPRS is hoping to earn on the investments in the pension fund.
I think Mr. Brian Tobin is here, who, and if we want to provide, you there? Brian, if you want to provide, the question by our council member was the rate, and then I'll have Steve Berline, President of the Phoenix, United Phoenix Firefighters, speak. Unless you want to go first, Steve, and then have Brian say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate your time.
And I wanted Brian specifically to address the issue of Councilman Nowakowski about the rate.
Okay.
After what,
my name is Steve Berline. I'm the president of the United Phoenix Firefighters Association. I represent more than 1,500 Phoenix firefighters. I'm also a captain on the fire department right over here on Ladder 1. We support this move, and we agree nobody likes the situation we are in with this pension system and our liability. I don't like it, but it's not our fault. It's not anybody's fault who's in this room. There's a couple bad years that the system experienced Me personally, I feel like Wall Street took our money, quite honestly, in 2006, 2007. But here we are. We're in this situation. But the needs of the city are greater than just paying this pension liability. Our parks are important. Our libraries are important. Everything that supports public safety that the city provides is very important. We can't cut our way to prosperity. We know that for a fact. So this relieves a little bit of stress off the general fund. That's why we support it. These more than 1,500 firefighters that I represent, they are your constituents. They are members of the community. They live in the community, they work in the community, they're teachers on their days off, they're coaches on their days off, and they support this move also. So on behalf of the United Phoenix Firefighters Association, we support this move. Thank you.
All right, thanks so very much, Steve. And then Brian Tobin, serve as chair of PSPRS, whatever testimony you want, but particularly you talk about this issue of the rate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members, for, again, an opportunity to speak to you today. To Mr. Nowakowski's question, the assumed earnings rate for the public safety personnel retirement system currently is 7.4%, as has been described. Not too long ago, when I started serving on the Board of Trustees, that assumed earnings rate was 8.5%. And the board, who are also representatives from the state, varying different degrees, have been very diligent in our ability to try and move those assumed earnings rates down, because as you know, it's getting harder and harder to achieve those high rates of return, especially when you consider how low the rates of return on bonds are. If you look back 20 years ago, most pension plans across the country were 60-40 blends, with a lot of, with 40% being bonds. And the rates of return on bonds have dropped, and as a result, we're trying to ratchet down our assumed earnings rate. But it's you also ought to know that for every 0.25% of a drop of that assumed earnings rate, that means 0.25%, that costs your employers about 1.5% of payroll on aggregate. So as you can imagine, ratcheting down the assumed earnings rate has pros and cons to that, whereas as you reduce it, it makes additional costs because it creates additional liabilities for the employers. So PSPRS has been reducing our assumed earnings rate and changing its asset allocation so that it can achieve its long-term goals with less risk because we're far less funded as we were before, and we're risk avert. So we have to take less risk by having a diversified portfolio. So I hope that answers your questions, but another speaker earlier had mentioned a 5% assumed earnings rate. If you went to 5%, that would cost the city of Phoenix an additional 12% of payroll. It's a lot of money that you would have to pay just by reducing that one factor and one factor alone. And with that, Mr. Mayor, if you have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to address any that anyone else might have.
Okay, any questions for Brian Tobin? All right, thank you so much for that testimony. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Here, but not, in favor, not wishing to speak, Will Buvidas, from the local police retirement board, Michael London, and P.J. Dean. Is anyone else here wishing to provide testimony for the city council on this item? All right, with that, I'll now turn to a member of the city council and a vice mayor, Councilman Williams, if somebody wanted to make a motion on item 68. Is there a motion on item 68?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve staff recommendation on item number 68. Is there a second? Councilman Williams, please.
I will second that, but with the clear understanding, one, that we get it paid off in 25 years, and I understand that we have to do this because it's June 28th is the deadline. But I want you to really research other options. I believe Councilman DeCiccio has come up with a couple ideas where it's a much lower rate, and I really would like to have you explore that. Tell us what ups and the downsides are of that, and bring it back to us this fall. Because I think we have the obligation, we have to pay it, and I don't like the cost of the bill, I don't like the interest, But I also don't want to close the parks, the senior centers, the libraries, and everything that it's going to take to make the budget balanced next year. So, with that, I second it.
All right, so a motion and a second. Now I'll turn to members of the city councils for any questions or comments that they may have. Vice Mayor?
Go ahead, Deborah.
Councilman Stark, please, go ahead.
I agree with Councilwoman Williams. I think we need to explore the ideas that the Councilman DeCiccio has come up with. I appreciate him talking a little bit about it, so hopefully you will. But I think it's something we do need to explore, and I'm intrigued by your idea, but right now I think we have to move forward with at least a positive motion today. But thank you, Sal, for everything you've done. You've opened up some great ideas.
Vice Mayor, do you have any questions or comments? I thought you wanted to.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I want to make sure, and I want to be very clear, and I want it on the record, of the fact that there is a pension reserve fund, and that is intended to pay down the pension.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, the objective of the pension reserve fund is only to pay PSPRS. And that would be either in the form to smooth out the annual contributions or handle situations when we have an economic downturn. But those funds will only be used to pay PSPRS.
And if a council changes and for whatever reason, will they have the ability to change the use of that fund?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, yes, it's an ordinance, and so a council could change it as you can change other ordinances.
So that's a stickler for me? And I'll
I don't
tell
know
you
that there's
why.
any way, unless you put it in the charter, that
Okay.
an ordinance can't be undone. Any ordinance can be. But what you have here is in writing, these excess funds will be held in reserve to pay any city obligation to PSPRS. That is what it is set up for. That is what it will be used for until the council does something differently.
Okay.
Mayor. Thank you very much. Councilman DeCiccio, please.
Just if I could too, I mean, for those of you that have been following this and have talked to Councilwoman Williams and Stark about it, I mean, I don't think there's any one issue that's bothered me more than this one, and I'll explain why, except for, I think Councilwoman Stark talked about the 24-hour permitting that we got through. That was the last real passionate thing that we were both involved in. But the reason why that I have concerns with this is that if you look at it, I mean, right now you've got multiple things that are occurring. One, the police and fire pensions are the most destable of all of them. Adding debt onto that just makes it even worse. But if you look at the cities across the country that have failed, that have had the difficulty, are those are the same cities that have gone on and added debt upon debt upon debt and were never able to recover. So when you look at that, and you look at Chicago, you look at Detroit, 15 years ago, most people would say, God, they were just strong, they were vibrant, they were working. Every city, including Phoenix, which I love more than anything, could fail at some point. And what happens is we have the best of intentions, but by adding those debts on year after year after year, you set it up to where people in the future can never recover. They just can't recover from that. And that's what we're seeing right now being played out in the state of Illinois. I almost call it the country of Illinois. I meant country of California, not the country of Illinois. But so that's what's occurring across there. And so, you know, it's been the racking of the brain, and I appreciate the comments from Williams and Stark on this thing too, but there are multiple options of how to do this. My preference would always be just to start paying it down. And I think people that know me, I've had this conversation with them repeatedly over the years, that the sooner we start paying down the pension debt, the better off we're going to be. So right now, you look at things and say, well, gosh, who would pay 7.4%? You've got a home loan. Just think of it your home, because I've heard this example used repeatedly here. Would you pay 7.4% on a home loan? You would never do that. You would never do that. You would never pay those things down at that. And that's why you see this ratcheting up of this increased debt, is because the rate matters. Rates matter and what you pay for it. So the other alternative, and I'll talk about the pros and cons on that too, because I want to be able to do that, because I've been asked that, like, what are the cons? And people that know me know I will lay that out too. So the idea would be we've got a 2.1% pension debt today on police and fire. $2.1 billion. That's unfunded. That's a huge number. And by adding the 2.3 billion, that just makes it even worse. But if you really want to secure pensions, the best way to do that is to pay it down or create a payment plan where you are stuck to it. And you know, the model we have now, I understand what it is, but people can roll that over the years. They don't have to pay into the reserve. Those things don't happen. So there's multiple ideas. So by creating a payment plan, not a payment plan, but a real loan, and I would encourage staff not to necessarily look at the bond market because those have tanked, but look into the capital markets as well because you're going to get a better rate than you are in the bond market. But even outside of that, the bond market's going to be around 3.9, maybe 4%. Your capital markets, I think, are going to be considerably less and better terms, and you can pay those off. Not as difficult, but that's another issue I'll have internally with staff. So if you look at what's occurring in the marketplace here, by creating this fixed loan rate, not only can you get loans, let's say even, let's use a high number of 4%, that saves money every single year, year after year after year, and it's a fixed payment just like your mortgage payment. You fix it out 30 years. I would prefer it to be 20, but if you did it, you know, apples to apples, you still get a better deal that way. The other thing that you need to look at is the stability of our police and firemen, and women. I'm sorry, didn't mean to be politically incorrect. But if you look at this, by making this commitment and not use the word flexibility, because flexibility means you may never make that payment in the future. So by doing that with our police and firefighters, you've now created a payment plan that you're stuck to. And future councils would have to do it in case unless they wanted to refinance, but it's a long process to do that. It requires a lot more thought going through that. So now you have a payment schedule of either 20 years or 25 years or 30 years. You pay it off. The other thing that you need to look at when you do this is those additional savings that you will have year by year by year. You put a portion of those, I would prefer all of it, but I'm guessing that at least a portion of that would go into a sinking fund or a reserve fund. So at least the analysis we did, we showed a significant savings right off the bat at 2.7% versus this by paying it off early, and that would be about $76 million per year in savings, and then year after year. The plan we have now, and correct me if I'm wrong, is about $421 million we'd be paying in year 30. That would be the final payment. It's just unsustainable. It will never work that way. So you set up your payment and you pay it off earlier. And that's what I'm hoping staff will look at. I understand the need to deal with this today. I get it. I don't agree with it, but I do understand at least the other side of this. But to look at these other options that are out there, I think are critical. You've got to bring stability to the police and firefighter funds, the pension funds. This is the way to do that. And you pay it off, create a loan, you pay that thing down, and you're stuck on the payment. And so you want that commitment. So what does it do? And where the cities have failed, other cities across the country have failed because they have not made the payment. They just didn't pay it. That's where the failure has occurred. And that's where you hear the word from city staff about they needing the flexibility. But at some point, we've got to make a commitment. And the commitment could be now, could be in 2 months from now. And the commitment is to our police and firefighters that we're going to honor the agreement we have with them and we're going to pay this thing down. The other is the commitment to the taxpayers and a commitment to a real structure that works. That's how you make these things work. By just constantly doing this thing, this motion over and over again, we're never going to get there. So that's where cities have failed across the country, but other cities have, and the state of North Carolina just did this, and they're saving $289 million. So from our analysis, we showed about a $4 billion plus savings, but that's on a 2.7% rate. If it's higher, it'll be less, but it's significantly a stronger savings than what we're seeing at 7.4%. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I want to ask the manager, obviously, Councilman brought up the issue about other jurisdictions not making their pension payment.
Mayor, the city of Phoenix has always made its pension payment. We're required to make our ARC, and that's not an issue for us, is making the payment.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions by members of the council? Councilman Valenzuela?
Just a brief comment. We talked about this just about a week ago, and I laid out all the reasons why I feel like this is important. It's not the ideal situation. You know, the other side, it's not a simple question of, you know, do we want to extend debt? I imagine if that was the one question being asked to all of our constituency, including my family members, including the people that live in my house, they would say no. The other flip side to that, and it was discussed today by some of the people who spoke about the important core services that the city is responsible for. Police, fire, streets, water, the list goes on and on. Trash collection, it goes on and on. Now, the full question is, you know, do we extend debt? Do we extend debt by keeping these services, adding to those services? You know, this budget that we just passed today calls for about 300 more first responders. Or do we hold the line and cut those core services? And some people feel that way, and you may live in the safest neighborhood in Phoenix, and that's great. Others rely on after-school programs and senior centers and libraries. Others rely on public transportation. And well, frankly, we have to look out for everyone in this city. Now, Ms. Olson and Mr. Barton, I know, because I've had these discussions with the city manager and our team, you know, the options to look down the line, I mean, this has been thoroughly looked at, but I do appreciate after this vote, I believe it will pass, but I look forward to a session in the fall where the full council can get a full briefing, because it's not, from what I'm gathering, it's not as simple as just saying, let's go get a $2 billion debt and we'll switch it here, and that it's not that simple, unfortunately, but we will get some answers and we will push the envelope and we will look for solutions. But today, this is the best option on the table. And I do like the flexibility of this option. I do like that, you know, if we do find that other solution, we can pay this off. We don't have to hang in there for 30 years. I appreciate the flexibility. I'll tell you, you know, I do describe it like many others have on a 30-year loan. Many homeowners know exactly what that means. It's a 30-year loan, and if you can afford it, if you can pay it off in 15 years, why wouldn't you? I would love to do that. I'd love to not have a car payment. I'd love to be able to buy my house outright. The only thing preventing me from doing that is that I can't. I don't have that in my budget. I have to be realistic. Now, you know, I'm taking the steps. If I can pay my debt off sooner, my house off sooner, then that's exactly what we'll do. But there are other key services that my family needs, you know, whether they be education, as an example, transportation, groceries, and so on and so forth. So it's not the ideal situation. I know it's not the most popular. It certainly is not the most popular when all you see is one side of the coin, or when all that's considered is one side of the coin, which is, do you want to extend debt? I mean, who would say yes if that was the only information given? But it's not that simple. And so, you know, this is a time for problem solvers, and so we have to solve this problem. And today, this is the best option that we have available, so I'm supporting.
Thank you very much, Councilman Valenzuela. Any other comments by members of the council? Councilwoman Gallego.
Thank you. When the legislature and Governor Ducey passed and signed this bill, they were recognizing that cities need flexibility. It's important to note that this bill passed the legislature unanimously. So to say this is an option they didn't want us to have would imply that there is not one true conservative in the legislature if they were giving us this option. We have some very conservative legislators, but they felt this was responsible, didn't speak out about it, wanted to give cities the options, And economists say that having options does preserve flexibility and let us adapt to changing conditions. We have strong support on this city council for paying down this deep debt. It's very important to me that the budget we passed today pays the firefighters and the firefighter and police officers of today's pension debt today, but we do have a pretty significant debt, and we have to think about what is the appropriate period over which we should pay that debt. So we have to look at whether it's a recurring or non-recurring problem. And generally, if you look at the advice we've gotten from actuaries, academics, professionals in this area, they say with non-recurring debt that you can look at a longer period. So we have to look at, again, how we got here. There were some things that happened in Wall Street, but there was also a Senate bill that police and firefighters strongly opposed, but I think Councilman DeCiccio advocated for. People at the time said it was unconstitutional, and the courts decided that it was unconstitutional. So we got a whole pile of new debt that we have to pay back as a result of that. I believe that's a non-recurring expense. I don't think we're going to have more and more failed constitutional bills over and over again, but if we are, it would be good to know, and we can turn to our colleagues and see if that's something we should expect. But I think it was a one-time occurrence, and so we can look at that as a non-recurring expense and pick the appropriate time period to amortize that. So to me, this is a responsible option. We will look to pay down that debt as soon as we can, but we will also do it at an appropriate time period.
All right, thank you very much, Councilwoman. Any other comments by members of the council?
I guess I wanted to also add to that. I apologize. I do have some concerns about interest rate arbitrage and getting into that area, so I would want us to study that very closely. I think that could be troubling.
Councilman Nowakowski, please.
So, Mayor, just for some clarification, are we going to bring this back with other ideas on how to cut down that debt that we have before the 25 years? Because what I'm afraid is that somebody mentioned that we're just going to kick the can down the street. I don't want to kick the can down the street. This is a solution, but at the same time, I want to bring it back as soon as possible with those ideas that Councilmember DeCiccio brought up, if it's possible or not, to look at if we could get an outside lender to come in and what that would look like. If there's other options that we have. I mean, this came to us within 30 days, and I mean, that's pretty quick to make a decision on a $2.1 billion decision here. So I want to make sure that we're going to bring this issue back soon, not just a couple years from now, or we wait for another council to be another council member to be sitting up here that has no idea of what we were discussing this year. So is there...
Okay, so let me think what I think is on the table, and if the maker of the motion, a seconder, disagrees, certainly let me know. The maker of the motion has recommended that we adopt the hybrid plan, which means we will accept the offer made by the legislature and the governor to enter into a 30-year amortization program for our PSPRS liabilities, that we will then adopt by ordinance a plan under which we would pay that down in a 25-year period. Councilman Williams has asked that staff come back in the fall with at least initial analysis if there are other ways to save money on the pension liabilities that we have. I would argue that this is what Denise does all the time, is looking for ways for us. Anytime the city has debt, if we can either refinance it or pay or find other ways to have a lower interest rate, they do that all the time, and they come before this council with recommendations. And I think what Councilman Williams is saying is we trust that our staff will be looking at all those options, and she's asked that at least they begin that process ASAP and including as soon as this fall, reporting back before this city council. But I would argue that we would expect the same of any liability of the city. If there is a way to refinance and for the city to save money or come up with alternative sources that would save the taxpayers money, we would do it, and that's an ongoing obligation by Denise Olson and her team. But that would include, assuming we vote yes on this today, this would include that. So that's my understanding of what the motion is. If the maker of the motion has any different, I think Danny, you're the maker of the motion, Councilman Valenzuela. If you have any different interpretation, let me know. That's what's on the table.
That's why I was asking for clarification. Just want to make sure we were going to bring it back.
Yeah, we refinance debt regularly when it makes strategic sense for the city. And I think Denise's job is to look at all options to save the people of our city money. Any other comments or questions?
But I just, on that
Yes,
note,
of course.
we want to be sure that we talk to our debt holders about Councilman DeCicio's interest rate arbitrage plan and make sure that we understand their reaction.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments or questions? Okay, I'll be.
Mayor.
Councilman Waring, please.
Yes, if you don't mind, thank you, I appreciate it. I'm adamantly opposed to this plan. I don't think it's looking at things in the long term, which frankly politicians get accused of a lot. Realistically, I think we're going to be spending an extra $1 billion so that we can spend more money next year, because I think that's what fiscal flexibility is really code for. We might face a budget deficit next year, and so we're going to go ahead and push, people have said kick the can down the road, however you want to phrase it. We're going to put a lot more pressure on council members 20 years from now. And I understand we want the services we want today, but those folks 20 years ago, and I'm still alive, I certainly plan to be living in Phoenix. My kids hopefully will be living in Phoenix. They're going to want services too, and we're pushing a lot of payments down the road. Again, whatever phrase you want to use, it's just not something I would recommend. I understand the need to balance next year's budget and the coming year's budget, but one thing I would caution is that we're in pretty good fiscal times now. I recognize it's not perfect for everybody. It's not as good as it was 10 years ago, et cetera, but it may never be that again. This may be either as good as it gets. It's certainly probably been as consistent as history tells me it's likely to get. And in terms of improving year by year, not as much as we'd like, but at least things, we have growth anyway. Who knows when that's going to stop? And now, who knows what we'll have 20 years from now? We're talking about here putting a lot more pressure on the future generation of council members and citizens to balance their budget, because they're going to have all these extra payments to make at a time when they may have a worse fiscal situation than us. In fact, I would argue it might likely be that, based on my reading of our long-term economic history as a country. There's certainly ebbs and flows. Maybe it'll be better, but it's probably going to be hard to top where we are right now. We've got record revenues. Again, it's not what you might have guessed if you look back 10 years ago, but bottom line, I think this is a short-sighted policy. I understand why those who are going to vote yes are doing it. I respect you and your decision and why, but I just don't think it's looking at the long term. We're doing this, right away so that a vote could be had next week so we can start, I guess, implementing this the week after. I just don't think I'm not comfortable with that. So those are my thoughts, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Waring, for your comments. Vice Mayor?
So in my briefing and my understanding, the reason why we're voting on this today is because there's a June 30th deadline date to let the state know what we are doing.
Actually, June 28th, so we have to notify the state prior to the last scheduled PSPRS board meeting, which is June 28th.
And when were we notified about the changes and determined to have this dialogue before June 28th?
Well,
the memo and notice from the PSPRS about this time frame came on May 18th, because what happened was the emergency clause that was placed on it and signed made the option available to go in as soon as July 1. So that was the change.
And that's why we're in the middle of this discussion today, because we're up against the timeline or a deadline date to make a decision.
That's correct.
And that I just want to get that cleared as to how we're in this situation, and knowing that we will always pay our debt, but this is why we're making the decision that we're making at this moment.
Correct.
I had a few years ago, I want to say maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, ASRS, the Arizona State Retirement System, also went through the process of amortization and went through a whole process as we are going through now. And that was also under Governor Jan Brewer. So Governor Jan Brewer, under the situation we were in, also under the state situation, and amortization, ASRS, one of our biggest, largest retirement systems, went through this process. Now we're here today, under Governor Ducey, we have these options. So I believe that all politicians and all elected officials are trying to figure out how to pay for the liabilities that we have and the commitments that we have, and across the country this is happening. It's not just us, it's across the country. And so there are commitments made in the past that we are now paying for at this moment, and we're making major decisions of the future. In dialogue and in great conversation with everyone, I am very much secure, because one of the things before I was going to make a decision was to make sure that the pension reserve fund was established and that it was there. And I think every one of my colleagues, regardless if they're a yes or a no, want this debt paid down. We're also very conscientiously have looked at 20, 30, and we're now in 25. So it is up to our responsibility, and really, if we're no longer sitting at this dais, I will always remain active within my community to come back and say, we voted on this, we made the commitment, and you need to pay the 25 within the 25 years. I think it's very responsible of us, and we are in the situation, there are services that all our community wants and we provide. I don't think, as Councilman DeCiccio wants a strategic plan, I think he should come up with a plan and show us ranking 1 to, I don't know, 100 to tell us what is number 1 and what is the least service that we want to do. At the end of the day, this is what we have to do. I think we worked really hard as a collective to get to this space. And I really think at the end of the day, I am going to do the right thing. And I will be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor, any other comments by members of this council? I will be supporting the motion. I do want to say thank you to our friends at the state legislature and Governor Ducey for providing not only City of Phoenix, but other cities this option. I think this option best ensures that the city will be able to provide the important retirement security that our police officers and firefighters depends on, and also gives us our flexibility to keep providing the outstanding services that City of Phoenix is to provide to its citizens. And by adopting this motion, the hybrid option, it balances those two interests in the most fiscally responsible way. And I think it's important that we take this action and take advantage of it now, so we get to take advantage of it in our next fiscal year. And I appreciate the opportunity to set up the pension fund, the reserve fund, to be used for that purpose. With that, roll call.
DeCiccio.
No, just kidding. No.
Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Stark. Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
No.
Williams. Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, that item passes on a 7-2 vote of the City Council. Next item on the agenda is item number 75. Item number 75 is contract for fire department relationship by objective and strategic plan process facilitation. Is there a motion on 75?
So move.
Is there a second? Are there any cards on item? Roll call.
DeCiccio. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Stark. Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
No.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes. Item, let's see, 81 through 84, can that be taken as a single?
7 first.
Oh, 77 first, I apologize. 77? A motion on 77?
Move approval?
Second.
Motion and a second. All right, Leonard Clark, testimony on 77. This concerns readiness cooperative agreement with DHS and FEMA.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Leonard Clark, resident of Phoenix. I strongly support this in light of the fact, and again, I do respect my conservative friends, but in light of the fact of global warming, just broke our temperature by 4 degrees, Salvation Army handing out water in Phoenix today, you never know in 10 or 15 years, these brave men and women of the Phoenix Fire and Phoenix Police, we might need them in a large emergency type situation because these temperatures are going crazy in Phoenix, but they say that every year. So I'll be frying an egg on the sidewalk with all of you, hopefully. Just come out and join me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion is second. Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, item passes unanimously. Next item is 81 through 84. Is there a motion on 81 through 84?
Move 81 through 84.
There's a motion and a second. Any cards in that item? Any comments by members of this council? Councilman Gallego.
These items move forward with expanding the SkyTrain, and I'm very much looking forward to moving these items forward. There will be great investments for the city of Phoenix. We want to have, we have a great international airport right now, but we want to continue to keep investing. At our busiest times, we really need additional ways for people to travel around, and so this, I think, will be something that will help us continue to compete and to lead the way at America's friendliest airport. Also really appreciate the commitment to working with small businesses. We have so much need in our community, and it's great that we're developing capacity with these small businesses that will be developing the future workforce as well as today's workforce. Councilwoman Stark and I have been working on apprenticeships and trying to make sure that we are ready with the next generation of workers as well, because we are growing so quickly in Phoenix. We need to be investing in our workforce as well. So these items will accomplish multiple important objectives.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio. Yes. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
No.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor. Yes. Mayor Stanton.
Yes, the item passes 8-1 before the City Council. Next item on the agenda is item 88. Is there a motion on 88?
Move item 88.
Second.
Ms. Barker, do you have testimony on 88? Is she here? Mr. Barker? All right.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. Diane Barker, District 7. And this 88 has to do with an amendment to the Light Rail Ticket Partnership Program. This program has helped people get introduced to using transit. I think overall it's been a good deal, but what I'm really happy about here is you're going to include the bus. You actually mentioned the bus with light rail. I've long felt that we displaced the flexible bus and we put the rail in its spot, which is fixed. And anybody that knows about systems, flexible is better, and in this case, the bus is less expensive to operate, and we bring more revenue in on fast buses. People want to go fast. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm going to give you a little information in case the deal comes back in town, which it should, to comprehend the downtown area for a sports complex. Not only this Talking Sticks, but the Maricopa Stadium. Today at Board of Supervisors, there's going to be electronic transfer of about $5 million that comes from ADR into directly U.S. Bank for the car surcharge that was for the stadium that the big university stadium that Maricopa County Stadium get some of that money so that they can do the Cactus League. And after reading the facilities agreement, it's increasing the bond debt from the Cactus League monies. And what I'm saying, being the fact that we've got a lot of repairs that Maricopa County's going to handle, that they don't have the money. The fact is, Mayor, is there's supposed to be renovation, and my councilman, Michael Nowakowski, are aware of, to renovate the Sun's Talking Stick. I'd like to see that you have all this discussion about debt, that you will take this in consideration, not only now, but what we do to renovate this area, to make an enterprise and decrease debts and move people and have a multimodal station that brings people by express bus because you get more at the fare box.
Thanks so much. No other cards on the item. There's a motion in favor. There is a second. Councilman,
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Are the appropriate people at the counter?
Just inappropriate people.
So I guess for the staffers who are there, so light rail does not, we don't recover all the costs of the people riding. Taxpayers have to subsidize that. But this number 88, basically it's more revenue, which means taxpayers have to pay less. Is that an accurate statement?
Mr. Paniagua.
Mayor, members of the council, Mario Paniagua, Deputy City Manager. Here with me is Albert Santana, High Capacity Transit Manager. And in answer to your question, yes, this item on the agenda is to revise the fare policy to allow the expansion of a very successful program with the Talking Stick Resort Arena, to expand that to other large events where we can be allowed to collect 31 cents per event attendee, as we do with the arena. And so this helps promote a really positive user experience, helps keep our trains moving during those events, and event organizers appreciate the availability of the transit options. So very many benefits in addition to the revenue, as you mentioned.
So, Mayor, if I were to summarize this, it's the events at the arena paying instead of the average taxpayer. It's not what I'd like to see. It's not full cost recovery, but it's better than it would be otherwise.
Yes. It's estimated to be full cost recovery. I want to make sure it's accurate. It's intended to be full cost recovery for those but it's based upon an assumption of how many people will use it.
Mayor, overall, it's intended to reach the regional fare recovery goal of 25%.
Oh, I see. Okay. Councilman Marion?
Yeah, Mayor, it doesn't. So I guess my point is, overall, light rail doesn't recover all of its costs.
Yes.
And in this program, it doesn't. But otherwise, we might not be selling these tickets.
Yep.
We wouldn't be getting this revenue. So to me, I'm against light rail, as I think is probably well known, at least to members of the council. So this isn't a pro-light rail vote, but it is, to my mind, a pro-taxpayer vote because, we are at least recovering more costs than we would have been otherwise. I think that's a fair summary of what we're doing here, right, Mario?
I would agree with that comment, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other comments, Councilman Gallego?
Thank you. I'm glad we're expanding this very successful pilot program. This is one we hear regularly about from our community members. We have older adults who like to let someone else do the driving and don't want to be looking into the light, and we also have young families who think the ride on the train is one of their favorite parts about going to concerts or Suns games. So it's been very successful. As a downtown council member, I've also really enjoyed it because it takes cars off the streets and makes it easier for my residents and business owners to navigate when we have these great events. We do large events and sports very well in this community, and we're continuing to innovate. So I think this is one that will help the Lost Lake Festival be even more successful, and want to congratulate the Vice Mayor and Mayor for their work in bringing the Lost Lake Festival to our community. That will be something we'll all look forward to in October. So I hope more people will learn about this program and take advantage of it when they buy their tickets to Talking Stick Resort Arena or to the Lost Lake Festival. It's an easy way to ride, and going off Councilman Waring's point, I think we are going to not have to pay for and build as much parking for events like those at Indian Steel Park, the more we can have this great alternative for our visitors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Stark. Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, item 94 is next, or motion on 94? Motion in favor, there's a second. Any cards on that item? Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. My name is Leonard Clark. I'm actually going to be against this. Now, I understand the law enforcement, they already have unmarked vehicles, but I don't like the idea. We've had in the Arizona State House of Representatives or the Senate, I don't recall, the session before last, one of the members using their vehicle or unauthorized funding to go campaign. And I'm not saying any one of you specifically, but being that you're politicians, I don't feel comfortable. I don't want you using your car or city car, our funding to do your campaigning. Let the corporations do that. They're already doing it through Citizens United. I don't want my tax dollars being used for that. I don't like the idea of the perks. I don't get the perks. I have to pay for my parking. Even with validation in the city parking garage, I'm going to pay $6. Citizens, that's having a financial effect on citizens wanting to speak. So let me just reiterate, I don't think you deserve to have the perk of having your private cars going around. There was a mayor who, let's just say he had a friend that he helped privately, had a relationship with. I don't want you using my tax dollars either with an unmarked city vehicle or our funding to do that. Do that on your own dime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other cards on the item?
Mayor, just a question.
Vice Mayor, please, and then Councilor Z.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't see that.
Go ahead. We might have the same question. Go ahead.
It's probably the same. What was the purpose of exempting these vehicles from putting the words official use only? I mean, it's actually a really good question Mr. Clark has.
Mayor, members of the council, state law allows for cities to request this exemption each year for certain police vehicles, vehicles that are engaged in social service and other confidential activities. This is an exemption that we seek each year because it's conducive to confidential operations.
So it will be only, I want to make sure you get this on the record, those vehicles that are in confidential situations, correct? It's the only time it will be used, correct? Someone just has to say yes on the record.
Yes, Councilman,
yes.
That's correct.
That's all I want to hear. I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor, do you have another additional question?
No, that was the question. I have a second one.
Please.
Regarding politicians campaigning, I'm not really sure what Mr. Leonard Clark is speaking about, but none of us have a city vehicle or anything like that. So could you please speak to that?
Yes, these vehicles are supposed to be used for work purposes only, professional purposes only. And so we have rules that dictate they're not supposed to be used for personal use. And we hold them accountable, hold employees accountable to that. And again, this is just for investigative purposes.
All right, any other comments or questions? Roll call.
DeCiccio. Yes. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Stark. Yes. Valenzuela. Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, I believe that item passed unanimously. Item 114 is next.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second on 114. Mr. Clark. No, thank you. All right. Roll call.
DeCiccio.
This 114 citywide demographic study. That's all right.
Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, that item passes unanimously. Next item is 117.
Move approval.
The motion, is there a second? There is a second. Let's see, Cassandra Ayers, in favor. You got your motion. All right, excellent. All right, Brendan, abundance of caution. Okay, good to see you. So the motion is in favor. There is a second. Any comments by members of this council? Roll call.
DeCiccio. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stan.
Yes, that item passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item number 127 and 8. I think they're companion items.
I move approval.
This concerns a text amendment for group home facilities in the city of Phoenix. We'll proceed by having a staff report from Alan Stevenson, our planning director. Then I'll hold a public hearing. There are numerous cards on this item. And then we'll see if there is a motion and a second, and then take any city council questions or comments, and then we'll take the vote. Item 128, the companion item, is for the hiring of a consultant for group home consulting services, who is, the staff is recommending individual who's been done this work around the country. Mr. Stevenson.
Mayor, members of council, thank you. I have with me here Trish Gomes, zoning administrator, and Marcel Escalar, who is the project manager for this group home text amendment. I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation to go through, and then we're happy to answer any questions. So this proposed text amendment does deal with ensuring consistency with the Federal Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act. It also formalizes a reasonable accommodation provision and modernizes our definitions and regulations to conform to state and industry standards. Our current group home regulations have not been updated in a number of years, and most everything was called a handicapped group home and just put into a broader category. This will bring those out and modernize our definitions and formalize that reasonable accommodation provision. The reasonable accommodation provision is what allows us to enforce a spacing requirement of a quarter mile for group homes that are 6 to 10 residents within inside those. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination and says you have to have a reasonable accommodation for someone to petition the city that a land use or zoning policy or restriction is discriminatory against them, and have that evaluated to seek relief of that specific provision. This ordinance puts that back into place. We did have a number of meetings since last fall and through the spring with a lot of groups, as well as all the various village planning committees. All the villages did hear this. It was recommended for approval by 10 of the village planning committees as originally presented. 2 villages had it recommended with a few modifications. 1 village did recommend denial under the original proposal. We went back and made some changes based upon input from stakeholder groups, and at that one, the Alhambra Village Planning Committee recommended approval with some changes. The Camelback East Village Planning Committee did recommend denial of that addendum A changes. The issues that came out of that were of primary concern were the change in number of residents from 1 to 5 to 1 to 6 with no spacing requirement, concerns about the reasonable accommodation language being too broad, and potential for a business use in a residential district. In addition to some of the oversight issues related to potential to license and do other things related to group homes for some oversight issues. This new addendum A text amendment that we're asking for your approval today updates the definition regarding persons with disability, keeps the rooming house, updates the sober living home definition. It rolls back the number of residents to remain 1 to 5 as a category with no registration and no spacing requirements, and that 6 to 10 does have the registration and spacing requirement kept as it is today. Clarifies enforceability and updates the separation features with a reasonable accommodation provision so that we can enforce that quarter-mile spacing. It does also update an appeal process for reasonable accommodation to the Planning and Development Director. Those changes are consistent with some of the most recent outreach that we have had with some community folks and others that are interested in this particular issue. Staff does recommend approval per the DAEI subcommittee recommendation with the direction that staff work with our consultant, which is the next item on your agenda, and the working group to evaluate the reasonable accommodation process and that 1 to
And then also in the 1 to 5 resident property manager issue, to look at that as part of the other work that we will do with the working committee and the consultant over the summer. We have had one meeting with our working group, and we'll continue to have other meetings throughout the rest of the summer. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
All right, that's a staff report. Any questions right now? And obviously, Mr. Stevenson and his team will be available throughout this hearing. Okay, so now I'm going to open up the public hearing on this item. So open up the public hearing on item 127. And some people filled out cards for both 127 and 128. If you did, just please provide whatever testimony now on both items. Public hearing is now open. First speaker will be Ms. Lori Fitzhugh. Please come forward and provide whatever testimony you have. And I know a couple of people have donated their time, so you have additional time as needed. And then Mary Abrokta is next. Ms. Fitzhugh.
I'm Laurie Fitzhugh, resident of Phoenix, and I'm here as a member of TAP, Take Action Phoenix, and the Montebello Avenue Block Watch and the Sevilla Neighborhood Association. I'm the founding president. The Sevilla Neighborhood Association is a square mile with about 6,400 household units in it. TAP does support this amended version of the Group Facilities Text Amendment as it was presented today. We have a little caution about reasonable accommodation. We think it can be refined a little bit, and will be that opportunity will be presented with the working group. We appreciate the staff's energy and effort and very hard work to get to this point. We're deeply grateful to them for what they've done and the investment in time. In my neighborhood, I want to distill this down to a personal story. We had 5 residential group homes that came to our attention. We knew we had more because we had audited every parcel in our area, and we knew we had many more, but they were quiet. They were just like my neighbors next door. No issue. 5 came up and surfaced, and they were, this was in the last 10 years and not under the current directors of the Department of Planning and Development or Neighborhood Services. I want to make that clear. One was an illegal 24/7 fully staffed residential drug rehabilitation facility. One was a men's SMI alcohol recovery resident that was owned by a nonprofit. One was a woman's SMI drug and alcohol recovery residential home owned by a nonprofit. And one was an early release residential facility for SMI drug, sex offenders, and young men who were near adult age coming out of the Department of Corrections. And one was a group home that was a halfway house with young adult sex offenders. Each one of these had a different funding stream. I want to speak specifically about the one that was a early release residential. And the reason why is it located 30 feet across the street from the Sevilla Elementary School that has approximately 1,100 children between kindergarten and 8th grade. And we only found out about it by accident. And the reason why is one meeting, individual showed up very concerned. He had been out watering his yard with his little girls around him, and one house away, one of the young adult men in the front yard of this early release facility said, "Hello, Officer so-and-so, your children are very attractive." He was an officer at the Adobe Mountain facility from which the residents of this facility had just been moved out of for early release. He was frantic. And in that process, what we found is we did not have the tools needed to look at the issue. We were very concerned. They were under a contract with the Arizona Department of Health Services and Behavioral Health and rated as a level 3 facility. That's the most rigorous, highest level of care. Those young men were to be escorted 24/7. They were not to be left alone, unaccompanied. There were rigorous programming in place. That program, with all the neighborhood concern and us researching, it finally came under control because of the police department, because of repeated acts of violence that originated with that location. The last straw was a stolen car being parked in the alley, contents of the home being loaded in the stolen car by the residents, having grossly, deeply assaulted the care provider present. So what we're looking for in this new text amendment, updating the language, it's very wonderful. And what we're looking for out of this working group that's going to be working over the summer are some more tools to keep up to pace with this largely growing and rapidly expanding industry. This is a business. We have, as you know, a opiate epidemic. We are number 2 in drug overdoses in Arizona. And the blessing is there is a lot of money and funding available for these vulnerable populations. We are concerned about having the tools not for the operators that have been in place a long time and know what they're doing and steward these programs and benefit these people, but we're worried about the amount of money coming to bear that's attracting operators that don't have they aren't putting their resident client patient number 1. They are interested in the rainfall of money. So I would encourage this text amendment to be passed, and I also support hiring an expert outside consultant. We're navigating a lot of federal law here. We're looking for best industry practices. We want to bring forward health and safety standards that's going to continue and perhaps enhance protection for this vulnerable population. And also, erstwhile, navigate and come up with best practices that recognize the established neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for your important testimony. Mary Brockton is next, followed by Jeff Taylor.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Mary Obrachta. I am president of the Ocotillo Glen Neighborhood Association, and I reside in District 5. I also represent approximately 2,400 households within Ocotillo Glen alone, which, and that equates to about 8,000 citizens in that area. So I talk frequently with my neighbors, with, through our monthly meetings, through emails, through the school, and I can earnestly say that I speak on behalf of each and every one of the residents that I've talked to. While we understand that this text amendment is not perfect, but what it is, it's an avenue to get us to where we need to be. And once again, like Lori mentioned, we really appreciate staff and all the hard work that was put into this to get us to this point. But if we're going to work towards an ordinance that is fair and just for the health and safety of residents in recovery, as well as neighborhoods alike, I think this is definitely a first start, and I'm very much in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Mr. Jeff Taylor is next, followed by Dennis Kirk.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Jeff Taylor, and I am not with the Salvation Army today. We don't run recovery group homes. As you know, I've represented the Salvation Army for a couple of decades, but today I'm representing ASRA, which is the Arizona Recovery Housing Association. What ASRA does is that they have a much higher level of operation, and most of the members are here with us today. This side of the room and this side of the room all agrees that we've got some really bad actors out there, really bad players. They are taking advantage of vulnerable populations. I have been in these homes. I have taken people's children out of these homes. They're taking advantage of a very desperate population. We all have seen an increase in homelessness in the city of Phoenix. In all of the years that I've worked with homelessness, I have yet to see a chronically homeless person in any of your districts that isn't mentally ill or drug addicted or alcoholic or some combination of both. And there are a lot of people that are doing a very good job that are decreasing crime in our communities and getting people back to being tax-paying members of society, and they have jobs, and we don't have to fund the wreckage of their addiction anymore. Just one example, and to Councilman DeCicio's point earlier, is that, you know, going through our line item budget, you know, if the city of Phoenix makes an arrest, then when that person is arrested and taken into Maricopa County Jail, there is a fee for the booking of that individual, and then $110 a day per day until that person is adjudicated. That is a huge cost to the city of Phoenix. So everybody agrees is that we want to protect our neighborhoods, the character of our neighborhoods. We want to have a focus on public safety, and that this is not perfect. It needs a lot of work because this is a protected population. So how do you carve out in the protected population, how do you carve out the bad players? And that's what we're working on. So I thank you for, we've met with many of you. For a long time, we've been talking to Councilman DeCicio on these issues, going back longer than I'd like to admit. But I think we're going to go forward and work on something that really makes sense for both sides of the room here.
Mayor?
Thank you very much. Councilman DeCiccio, please.
I also want to thank Mr. Taylor, too, for all the work that he's put into this. And true, I don't think there's anybody more educated when it comes to this issue than you. It's really these bad actors that have created the problem, and it has been a significant problem. If you look at what happened in Prescott, you had an inundation of 300 of these homes coming in, and Prescott's not that large. The situation that we saw in California is something that I think we're just trying to get ahead of the curve on here before it becomes significant. If it's a problem in your specific neighborhood, it's a problem today. You know, it's the problem that could be happening also as you're moving forward in this wave coming across. And it's just trying to get ahead of the curve here. I've just had concerns over this thing, especially with these unlicensed ones. That is a huge problem that needs to be taken care of and needs to be taken care of quickly. But thanks for all your work on it. You've done a lot of work, and you know, you've got my cell phone number, so I hear from you. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thank you,
Thanks
Mayor
so
and
much.
Council.
Dennis Kirk, followed by Wally Graham.
Good morning, Council, Mayor. My name is Dennis Kirk. I'm a member of ASRA. Just like this gentleman stated, I was that guy that was homeless. I was that guy that was done 12 years in prison. I was that guy that's I am that guy that's a 7-time convicted felon. But because of these programs of sober living that I still reside in today, you know, it's given me an opportunity where I bought a house for myself. Unbeknownst, it's right next door to a group home. You know, I haven't moved in yet to that house, but I've met the neighbors. They seem like great people. You know, there are some bad apples out there. We're not these facilities where we're coming in, we're trying to get money from insurance companies and coming in and filling these beds up in these houses. There's some really good sober living houses out there that are trying to help people. You know, we're trying to save lives out there. How can you put a price on a life? You know, you talk about your property value. Well, what if you save 10 lives with this sober living house? Is there a value on that life that you're saving? There's not a price that you can put on these lives that we're saving out there. You know, if it wasn't for, you know, places like this, the sober living houses out there, I'd probably still be out there on the streets today. So I applaud what these sober living houses are doing. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your testimony. Congratulations on your recovery. Let's see. Wally Graham is next, followed by James Placer.
Good afternoon. Wally Graham. I'm president of the Arcadia Osborne Neighborhood Association. We have approximately 2,000 rooftops and approximately 8,000 residents. I'm also a member of the coalition, the Neighborhood Coalition of Greater Phoenix, and a member of TAP, Take Action Phoenix. I'm coming to you today to support the text amendment because I think it's the right thing to do. We have to change the language. We have to change the consequences of not having appropriate updates in almost 17 years. So I'd like to just say thanks to the council, and particularly I want to say thanks to Councilwoman Pastor, Councilwoman Williams, Councilwoman Stark, Councilman Valenzuela, Councilman DeCiccio. We've had an opportunity to sit down with each of them and to talk with them and to get their input. So we got a nice chance to get some balance on what we did And what TAP did was to present a position paper. We worked with the Planning and Development Director and staff, and we're a bunch of amateurs. I still work, I still have fun doing what I do. Almost everybody on the group is involved in something else. But we took the time to say, here's a way to look at this issue especially from the balance that we'd like to see. And the balance we'd like to see is that what is good for neighborhoods is to have both neighbors who live in residential group homes and neighbors who live in just a regular house be able to say, this is our neighborhood and we're proud of it. One of the things that I do want to point out, and I'd like to apologize to Councilwoman Gallego and Councilman Waring, Councilman Nowakowski. We didn't have an opportunity to schedule time with them, but we will be meeting with them. And I know that they have input that would also add to our product. We want this text amendment to be approved. It's not perfect. It has flaws. It has things that need to be corrected. But as another speaker said, we believe that we can work through this with the appropriate counseling from the consultant and working through the summer. We think we can produce a new ordinance that's even better than the current text amendment and the old ordinance. TAP has collectively spent almost 3,000 hours working. If you take all of our man hours working on this process since February, that's a lot of time for a bunch of neighborhood people. But we've done this because we love what happens in our neighborhood. We love our city. So what we're trying to do is not do what some people might accuse us of doing, and that is TAP is not about putting group home operators out of business. That's not what we're about. We're also not against group homes in residential neighborhoods. We believe that's an appropriate place to put some types of group homes because that's where people can become really, truly integrated back into the community. We're not trying to cause more regulation and more bureaucracy. What we do want to do is we'd like to have people adhere to the things that take care of the residents of group homes and also take care of the neighborhood. We're not for clustering. We're not for adding burdensome regulation. What TAP is for is we are for registration and for health and safety regulations that provide a service for vulnerable populations in our community. And a lot of the residents of group homes are vulnerable people. You'll hear a lot about sober living homes. We're talking about a whole population. People who are in assisted living, people who are in seriously mentally ill institutions, et cetera. So this is not just about sober living. We want to make sure that all of those people are cared for. What TAP is looking for and what we hope to come out with is a win-win solution. Winning for neighbors and winning for residents of group homes. We want stable, safe neighborhoods. We want stable, safe environments for the residents of group homes. Keeping good operators in business is what we're for. Getting bad operators out of business is what we're for. We'd like to develop a new ordinance, and we hope to bring that back to you before the end of this year and certainly get it approved before the end of this year. But we think working together, we can make that happen. So thanks a lot. I appreciate all your help.
Thank
And Mayor,
you very much.
before you go down, Wally, Mayor, may I also thank Wally for all the work he's put into this thing. That if it's only 2,000 hours, I can't see that. I think it's a lot more. We wouldn't even be here today discussing this if it wasn't for yourself and for those members of your group here that have seen the impact of these homes, these unregistered, unregulated group homes that are in there. And I think you bring up a really good point, and I want to drive this home. It's not just the people that are in the neighborhood that are being impacted, it's those people that are in there that are not getting the care that they deserve to be getting. And a lot of them are probably some of the most vulnerable that are there. And then you also look at the impact that it has around it and the quality of life, the degradation of quality of life of the people around there. because of the fact that these people are just not responsible enough to take care of their own business. So I want to thank you and those others that are involved in this, everybody here in that front row right there. They're the ones that made this happen. We wouldn't be here even talking about this in this direction had you not driven. You drove this agenda, and this is really a neighborhood-driven agenda, and it needs to be firm, strong, and has to be effective. I mean, if you know me, that's how I like it to be. But, well, the clap is for all of you because of the work that you've put into this. Really, you've done this. But before the end of the year is too late. I'd like to get it done sooner from my end of it, only because it has to be done sooner. It cannot be waiting that long. And the real thanks to people like Deb Stark, Councilman Valenzuela that were here. They've helped drive this thing too. They've all sat in the meetings. Councilwoman Stark brought this up to me early on, and she said, hey Sal, we got a problem here. She helped drive this thing, and if it wasn't for Deb Stark up here on the council, I don't think we would be at this level today. So for those of you, you need to know what she's done early on this thing. But thanks, Mayor.
Thanks so much. How about James Placer? Is that accurate? Okay. He marked as opposed to the item, and then we'll have Frank Dansel next.
Hi, my name is James Plassett, and I think all of us are aware of alcohol and substance abuse. It's an extremely large problem nationwide. Specifically in Phoenix, Arizona, I want to say that I'm against the TAP amendment. The problem with the reasonable accommodation that's in the TAP amendment doesn't allow for current businesses that weren't under regulation. The issue is simply that a few businesses that are not being run correctly out there is making a bad name for everyone out there. When you're not regulating the businesses, it allows for an opening for many people. I want to say that I've been in the Arizona for roughly 26 years. I have 3 current businesses that I run and employ almost 180 people that have nothing to do with sober living houses. I have a brother that was taken from the illness, so it's a passion to me. I know a lot of you feel that these businesses are opened up to generate lots of money. I want to say that substance abuse is not limited to people who have been in the Department of Corrections and have been a felon for 12 years, but it does hit the professionals as well. It's personally hit me. It's not prejudiced to whether you're a businessman or someone who lives in the streets. I had the privilege of having a sponsor in the program, and he was in charge of running 4 group homes. I can tell you these group homes I am not interested in personally for making a lot of money. When I drove around with this gentleman, he received phone call after phone call, and what he had to say was, I have no beds available, I have no beds available, I have no beds available. There's an extreme need for these homes out there.
Thank you for your testimony. We have many meeting speakers to go, so appreciate your testimony.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to wrap it up by saying you're going to eliminate a lot of homes that are in need right now, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Frank Dansel is next, and then followed by Gail Palmer.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I would just put my card in to speak only if needed regarding any life safety requirements that are required through these group homes.
Thank you so much. Ms. Gail Palmer, you're next, followed by Thomas Brown. Ms. Palmer, Mr. Palmer, I apologize. Use your friend, please.
Mayor, Council, I am in favor of this, and I think the patients, the people that are living in these places need protection. I've got a daughter that's probably going to be in one of these because of mental problems. She can't live in her own house anymore, and I'm really concerned that it's something that she could live with and be respected in a decent neighborhood. I'm also concerned about the neighborhoods, these neighborhoods and the patients we have to help out. And that's all I have to say, but thank you for the work that all of you have put into this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Palmer. How about Thomas Brown? Did you provide testimony? You indicate you're opposed.
My name is Tom Brown. I am opposed. I am a founding member of ASA. I also have a letter to the governor that I would like to submit, and we also have a petition that as of right now we have about 850 signatures that are opposing this bill. I am, like I said, one of the founding members of ASA. We have a code of ethics, a code of ethics, a code of standards. We inspect each other's properties. We hold ourselves up to a higher standard. That is the reason I've gotten into this, because it's a passion of mine. You know, I have lost family members, and you know, we take people in that have nothing. You know, this woman here, she happened to mention about there's plenty of money around and funding. You know, I'd like to talk to you after the meeting, because I'd like to find out where that money is, because I'd like to get some of it. You know, because none of the men coming into my houses are getting funding from anywhere. You know, the men that come into my houses are sometimes sex offenders. I don't take sex offenders or SMI, but I know those people do need a place to live, you know. And if this bill goes through, I believe it will shut the numbers down, and those people will end up on the streets, in the canals. I find it very interesting that there was an earlier bill they were talking about opening up, that getting a liquor license at Circle K, you know, and the man talked about needles and alcoholics and addicts and feces and bottles of garbage. You know, that's what will increase, you know, in all of our neighborhoods if we don't recognize the need for sober living, you know. And that is my passion. Thank you for listening, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, council members.
Thank you very much for the testimony. How about Linda Colino is next? By the way, you know, Mr. Brown, he said there's a letter for the governor here. Obviously, that's a different level of government, but we will certainly mail it on to the governor's office.
That's already been sent out. I just wanted to show it.
Okay, appreciate it. Okay. Ms. Colino, good to see you.
Yes. My name is Linda Colino. Good afternoon, or wait a minute, good evening, council members and mayor. I am the chairperson for Augusta Avenue Neighbors, and I also represent another block watch that's just south of me, Hayward Avenue Neighbors. In total, in our quarter mile, we have approximately 396 homes, and so that's approximately 800 individuals or citizens within our area that we represent. I'm a member of the Take Action Phoenix, or TAP group, as well as the Neighborhood Coalition of Greater Phoenix. But I don't come to you as a member of these organizations or as a block watch person. I come to you as a mother of a person that was a drug abuser. And I also come to you as the daughter of a woman that was in a group home, okay, assisted living. That's what I come to you about. The good news is that my son is, after 18 years of drug abuse, is sober. He's got a great job, and he's going to have a great future. But what we had to go through for those 18 years was a horror story. I've seen so much, and I've seen so many people say that they're going to help. I paid the money. I don't have a retirement because I tried to help my son. And what did they do? They took my money, and they didn't help my son. It was only through love and support of his family that he was able to get out of this situation. Okay. So I'm telling you that I do understand what these guys are talking about. I certainly do. But what I want is health and safety of the residents, of not only the group homes, but of the neighborhood. We can't deny that there's building codes that have to be adhered to, that there's monitoring that has to be done, because when it isn't done, that's when we have problems. My mother was in assisted living. My sister and I went through 35 assisted living homes, 35, until we found one. Most of them were deplorable, and some of them were so sterile that we couldn't have her there because it was not like a home. And I'll just finish up that I understand that health and safety is important to a lot of people. But I feel that this text amendment, and thank you so much, Alan, and your staff, I think that it's the first step in the right direction. But it's not the only thing that needs to be done. We need to do more.
Thanks so much for your testimony.
Thanks.
Our next speaker will be James Jacobsmeyer, followed by Edward Correll.
Good evening. James Jacobsmeyer. I've been a resident in Phoenix all my life. I'm 27, and I haven't touched a mind-altering substance since 8/21/14. These homes are brave men and women that are willing to take in strangers to help them to live a better life. I think if someone's willing to get help, they should receive help. And for the lady with the son, she said she gave a lot of money to these homes and they took her money. Well, government-funded agencies will take a lot more money. These sober living places are not expensive, and I went to a sober living that was government funded, and then I moved out. If there wasn't sober living homes for me to go to, I would be in jail or prison. I would be in prison or dead. And there's, I believe the only hope for a future for humanity of this generation that's growing up is people that aren't wasting their minds with drugs and alcohol. And kids are dying every day. They're not starting out with alcohol and weed, they're going straight to heroin. And people are dying, and it's never gonna stop. And so these positive influences and these strong foundations with a positive, to go in a positive direction is absolutely necessary. And thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. How about Edward Correll, followed by Joseph Landon? He had to leave, okay. How about Joseph Landon then next, followed by Maria Euhens, I believe?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Joseph Landon, and I oppose this ordinance. Let me take a look at my notes. I have a couple letters here for you guys as well. These are in support of family members who've had their own sons and daughters in sober living, some of mine. And one that comes into mind is the retired police commander, Kim Humphrey, who both of his sons were a heroin addict and came under our care, where they were at wit's end and had no other options. We were able to come in and support this, where Kim has actually become a big part of parents of addicted loved ones. If I could hand these forward, you guys can review these. Kim's letter is the cover letter. So, basing off of my experience, there's officers in this room that arrested me. I've been arrested over 16 times. It cost taxpayers hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I didn't have a private insurance. I couldn't afford insurance. Treatment centers wouldn't take me. I took LARC, Community Bridges on Van Buren, the state-funded programs you guys offer. They kicked me out after 7 days. They didn't give me any other option to go somewhere. And it wasn't until I found this sober living house. They said, we'll take you in with no money. They took me off the streets. They gave me that scholarship. They allowed me to turn into multiple business owner I am today, paying multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars with the TPT service to go directly to Phoenix to pay some of your guys' salaries. I know that some of the things that are written in this text amendment will shut the program I operate down. I believe that sober living is a different classification than group homes. I lived in group homes growing up. I was a subject, I was a part of Durango, the juvenile detention system. I went through every program you guys offered, Nova Outpatient. I went through HIPSAP, High Impact Substance Abuse. I went through SB 21. I went through every one, and when they put you in a place like Tumbleweed, a group home, Those kids are forced to be there. That's a separate entity than sober living. We were combative. We set the place on fire. We did all these things. I agree those places need to be governed a little bit tighter, but I also believe there needs to be a separate entity of sober living. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Maria Yunes is next. I apologize. And then Brandon Riggins Gastineau.
Hi, my name is Maria Ewing, and I identify with almost everybody that has spoken. I grew up in a home with alcoholism, and I married a heroin addict, and I divorced him, and my second husband was bipolar, and he committed suicide. So I've been very involved in all of these things, and I've helped people. I've been in Al-Anon for 40 years. I've worked with drug addicts and alcoholics. I've seen healthy, sober living facilities, healthy homes for seriously mentally ill, and I've seen some very bad ones. I was a zoning enforcement inspector for 20 years. I worked on trying to enforce the current codes that are totally unenforceable, by the way. So it's open house for anybody that wants to come in and open businesses illegally with not the good intentions. The good sober living homes, we need those. Please help them get legal if they're good and healthy sober living homes and seriously mentally ill homes and elderly places. But you need to have a code that allows the zoning enforcer to go close down those bad ones. I just worked on a case in the Granada area where they had 10 seriously mentally ill people living under tarps, in sheds, in the garage, and they assaulted the neighbor. And she had to get an order of protection. And it took us like almost 5 months to get that place closed down. And when they left it, the property was destroyed completely. And the people that were in it are now on the street, like they were saying. That happens. But this is a first step. We have much, much more to do over the summer. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Brandon Riggins Gastineau, followed by Marie Herrera Daniels.
Hi, my name is Brandon. I'm an addict. I'm opposed to this ordinance. I'm currently living in a sober living home, and I have private insurance. Actually, I have state insurance, but I chose to go this route. It allows me to go to work. It's low cost, and it's not a burden for the taxpayers as well. And I also it helps me with my meals. It helps me with have a room to stay. There's only one other person in there with me. They take care of all the meals that I have. I go to about 7 groups a week. I've been sober for over 2.5 months. Joseph Landon is actually my sponsor. And I think without that program there, it's teaching me to help take responsibility and help myself. And I think a lot of the stuff I've been hearing from people who are supportive of this ordinance is a lot of red herrings. And I say that because no one's named one thing tangible besides fear. It's all about what could happen with this and that. These people are not getting rich off of my unfortunate. Actually, they're helping me get to where they are. A lot of these people that I know, they say if you want what we have, you follow these steps. A lot of these people are sponsors, sponsoring lots of other people my age or younger to better their lives. And if there's people pitching tents in backyards, yeah, close them down. But that's not my experience, and that's not the vast majority of experiences out there. And all I hear is a lot of fear. Sounds like a poll tax. Really, I mean, fire extinguishers and things like that.
Thank you.
What you're saying is you really want to make it harder for people to build more of these places for people like me. But if there's going to be less of these places, what do you think you're going to see in your neighborhoods in the future? A lot more drugs, poverty, and all that. With that, I'll go ahead and pass.
Thanks so much, Brian, for your testimony. Marie Herrera Daniels. By the way, we have a few more to go. And so if someone has already made the point that you wanted to make, you don't have to make it again. It's your choice, but it's your testimony. But
yes, good
Ms. Herrera Daniels,
afternoon.
please, if you want to provide testimony, please. Tyler Barnum will be next.
Good afternoon. My name is Marie Herrera Daniels. I am the project director for the Canyon Quarter Revitalization Program, which is surrounded by the Grand Canyon University area. I work with a nonprofit called Phoenix Revitalization Corporation. It's been around for 30 years. It is a revitalization program that works in neighborhoods. It is resident-driven. Right now, we deal with residents. We're working with residents, and I'm working with one particular family in the Granada neighborhood who has been adversely affected by a home with sober living patients. I don't believe any of the residents are saying they do not want or that they are opposing sober living homes. What they're saying is they want to ensure that the homes are regulated, they want to have trained staff, and they want safety for patients and their communities in which they live. So on behalf of PRC and the project that we work in the Canyon Quarter community, PRC supports the text amendment as a start and also supports the working group to ensure the other bullet points.
Thank you so much. Good testimony. Tyler Barnum, did you wish to provide testimony? Please. Followed by Mark Lewis.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Barnum. Just want to start off by saying I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for 8 months now. Congratulations. I did 6 months in a sober living home in California, and it's been such an important part of my recovery. I decided once I got a promotion in my career to move to Phoenix and stay in a sober living home during that transition. And this ordinance will most likely shut down the amazing sober living home that I'm in currently. It's honestly killing people. Not giving people the opportunity to have a safe environment during their early recovery is a death sentence for most people. Without sober living, I would probably be dead right now. I'm college educated, I have a career, just got a promotion, and this ordinance is, potentially gonna put me out of a safe environment and throw me right back into it. And I think it's an interesting spin that some of the people behind me have thrown on this. But beyond that, I oppose this.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Mark Lewis is next, followed by Mr. Paul Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, for the record, my name is Mark Lewis, and I'm here representing New Dimensions in Recovery. They have a couple of group homes in Phoenix, and they're supportive of this ordinance as written. I think they're about 80% of the way to reasonable accommodation, and I think that we've built some bridges with some of the communities on both sides of the fence. We still need to make sure to get the assisted living folks here to the table and some of the SMI groups who are not part of the little group that we need to bring together to make some good policy and move forward. And I think we need to make a concerted effort to identify some of the bad actors in the community and collectively do what we can to get them out of the business or get them into compliance with the ordinance so that we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming down. Mr. Paul Barnes is next, followed by Lillian Fogel.
Mayor Stanton, Vice Mayor Pastor, and members of the City Council, I left a letter at some of your offices Monday, so I won't repeat that, but there seems to be a gross misunderstanding on the part of the sober recovery community that neighbors want to put these businesses out of business. Not true. Fully supportive. We've always been supportive. That's what we want. We want to help them protect themselves, if anything. The only issue I have, and I mentioned in my letter that I wanted this text amendment revised, I realize that that's not going to happen today, but I do hope that the City Council will encourage the people that are going to be working on this text amendment over the summer to try to come up with something that will revise the reasonable accommodation appliance application process so that the neighbors can participate in it. Right now, it's strictly an administrative process that's handled by the planning director, and he has the sole decision-making, and there's no right of appeal. The general community is not involved. Some of the communities have been able to make that change, and so I would urge the City Council to urge the people working on this over the summer to try to revise that section to make it a more reasonable section. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lillian Fogel, followed by Aaron Waldman.
Hello. Hi. I am Lillian Fogel, and I live in the Witten District in District 4. And I came here today because it was brought to my attention about 90 days ago that we had a new facility opening up in my neighborhood. And when it happened, there was nothing we could do. We called to speak to people in the mayor's office to see if there was anything going on that we could do, and there was nothing. There was no notification that went out to people in the neighborhood. And so being here today, I wanted to come and speak, but listening to everybody, I realized what a positive impact that these homes do have when they're well run. But I think what really worries me is that I live in a neighborhood that is still relatively affordable to buy homes in Phoenix. And I'm concerned about multiple new homes opening in my area that could pop up anywhere that are maybe unregulated or unlicensed and that aren't really looking out for the people that are living in them. I think that we all as a community want to see long-term positive impact happen within our community. You know, my neighborhood was really affected negatively after the recession, and things went really stagnant. There wasn't positive growth. In the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of positive growth happen with new families, new people coming in and revitalizing my neighborhood. And I like to continue to see that happen, but I think what bothered me at first was the idea of this isn't a long-term person moving in to benefit me as a resident. It's a short-term resident coming in. So I like to see more oversight and more protection for the people in the neighborhood, and then also for the people that are going to be living in these facilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. How about Aaron Waldman, followed by Jeff Betters?
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Aaron Waldman. I am a board member of ALHA, the Arizona Assisted Living Homeowners Association, as well as our public policy chair. I'm also a homeowner myself of assisted living homes. I've got 3 of them here in Phoenix. Would just first of all like to say that I've reviewed the DOJ statement from November 2016 extensively. I think you guys did a wonderful job of accommodating what it calls for. Myself and ALHA as an organization do support this. I think it's well written and it serves its purpose well. Few tweaks that are small, maybe out in the arterial roads, that is a significant factor in looking at institutionalization and stopping that concern. But beyond that, what I hear a lot of here today is concerns about the quality. All of my homes are perfectly clean track records with the DHS, and I'm very proud of that. I don't mind regulation. I think that regulation is good because it holds care providers accountable, and it sounds like what really needs to be addressed here is sober living homes being subject to administrative code, not necessarily zoning code, which is about, you know, obviously where you can put these things. But all in all, great stuff. Thank you guys very much for everything that you've done. Only request would be that this shouldn't be applied in rears. I actually have a property right now that's being contested. The zoning department has been very helpful in going through the appeal process, but I do feel like I shouldn't even be subject to that in the first place. When I filed my notice of intent to establish a group home on April 7th, and it wasn't until May 15 or so, May 12, that they announced that they were going to be enforcing these rules already, despite the amendment not having passed. I've had to spend quite a bit of money on an attorney. It's not exactly fair considering that Section 701 of the zoning ordinance as it stands says that you must comply with the applicable separation requirements as of the date of registration. Well, I was 5 weeks before that at a time when it was formally not being enforced. So, it's ex post facto. Of course, it doesn't always apply to civil types of situations, but it should be honored here. I think that that is a reasonable accommodation in and of itself to go ahead and honor that for anyone who's put in the work and money and time to establish a home and providing for classes of people with disabilities during that time. So thank you very much. You have my support. I'd like to see this done the right way.
Thank you. Who is not wishing to speak is Shirley Dykeman. In favor? I have other speakers in favor, Margaret Dietrich and Larissa Valderrama. And then I have Jeff Betters ready to speak.
I have to leave the meeting, but I'll be appearing telephonically.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Jeff Betters. I am a Phoenix business owner, and I wanted to share and also hear and thank the other members that have spoke. A lot of my colleagues are here today sharing on this topic. The information that I'm receiving from both sides today brings a lot of new light to a lot of new things. The information I was given in the beginning did imply that they were attempting to shut down any sort of sober living in the Phoenix Valley. But the regulations or the ordinance that's put forth here, I can't stress the point that Joey made earlier, is that it would put the houses that I do operate out of business. I oppose the ordinance because, to my understanding, the Housing Act that protects myself and these residents allows us to live where they choose. And I do understand and see that there is a need for regulation in a process that does sound very broken now. If you're working in the industry or a member of the recovery community in Phoenix, you would know and have seen firsthand the ups, downs, the good, the bad. There is an absolute need for some sort of structure or revamping of that. This, though, in my opinion, is not the route to go about it. The other aspect that I do feel very strongly about is creating very bold lines separating sober livings from group homes, separating the issues at hand dealing with SMI patients, the sexual offenders, things of significance that are drastically different from each other. You've already heard a number of testimonies. I probably got enough stories to tug at everyone's heartstrings myself on my own life, and I know for a fact that a majority of the people here have had firsthand experience with either alcoholism or substance abuse. So I just wanted to stress the importance of separating these different types of groups that are afflicted with different disabilities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Greco, opposed, not willing to speak. Joseph Kramer in favor. Alan Miller in favor. Elizabeth Miller in favor. James Damali in favor. Angela Versteg in favor. Mary Tolan in favor. Jamie Coyle in favor. Monica, I want to say, Madrid, opposed. And then Anthony Pfeiffer opposed and does not wish to speak. Are there any other? Okay. I don't have the rules. Okay. I'll move with it. Diane, do I have a card from you? Okay, hang on. I think we're on 127 right now. And we're going to vote on 127, and then we'll move to 128. Okay, do I just gavel and close the public hearing? Thank you. Any colleagues that would like to speak? Councilman DeCiccio.
Just a quick one here, though. I've got a note here from the American Legion commander who asked me to share this with the entire council, but in particular the working group, because this is an area that I think is something that needs to be addressed, and I was kind of amazed when I read this, and so I'm going to read it to you, what he's asked me to send to you. And this comes directly from them. Please forward to the honorable council members, please, on behalf of the American Legion Department of Arizona Commander, and encouraging a yes vote on this. And this is something that I think you're going to find this interesting. The American Legion Department of Arizona Commander supports the text amendment providing oversight and regulation of group home housing. Currently, there is nothing that prevents veterans from being housed 3 or 4 per room with monies paid through the Veterans Administration. Since there is no city ordinance that prohibits such practices, the VA has no discretion concerning limiting the housing of, or warehousing of our veterans. These are individuals that fought for our country, fought for our lives, fought for our protections. They're being warehoused. I mean, this is a major concern. With this ordinance in effect, the VA could prohibit the warehousing of veterans, assigning 3 or 4 veterans or more veterans per room. And this is monies that are being done at the federal level too. you know, in motels refurbished as studio apartments. This has been an issue with 501c3 nonprofit organizations servicing veterans, as reported by TV5 News. So Craig Doyle used to be my ex-chief of staff, and he was very much involved in the veterans issues. So as we're moving forward with this, and Alan, you guys have done an amazing job on this. I'm glad of how fast you've worked on this and put it together. But like they said, this is just a start. I think it's a first start, but there are multiple things that we need to be looking at too. And if this is happening to our veterans, and if there's a way for us to work with this, and if it requires us dealing with the federal government, or not the federal government, but at the congressional level, because they'll have a little bit more attention at this than maybe possibly even our VA. But we need to know what those issues would be. And if you could also do an outreach to the commander of the American Legion. I've got his name and contact information. I'd like to do that because I'd like to find out what they've been working on too, if we can include that moving forward. But again, I'll just be very quick. I want to thank Alan and his staff. They've done an amazing job on this. But I got to tell you, you guys did it. You've driven this. You've made it work. You deserve a lot of the credit. And what you've done is you've done this selfishly. It's to protect our community, to protect our neighborhoods, and protect our quality of life. And the work that you put into this is astounding. I mean, just astounding. And you're committed. And I am going to tell you this, though, too. Remember, we talked about our first meeting. If intuitively it doesn't make sense, then it doesn't make sense. Drive home the agenda that you believe needs to be done. If it requires us going to court, then we do that. But if whatever it's going to take for us to protect our homes, protect our communities, protect our quality of life, and at the same time protecting those individuals that are in these homes, then do that. And if it means we have to go to court, then do that. Push that agenda, push it as hard as you can, make it work. Don't take no for an answer. Find out how to get it done. Thank you, Mayor, or Vice Mayor.
Okay, I need a motion.
I'll be happy to make a motion. Thank you.
Second.
Oh, wait a minute, I got to read it all out because it was for legal purposes. And then just a quick comment. So I want to make a motion to approve the Downtown Aviation Economy and Innovation Subcommittee recommendation with direction for staff to work with the consultant and working group to evaluate the reasonable accommodation process and the 1 to 5 resident property manager issue as part of their work program and adopt the related ordinance. And if I can quickly make a couple comments, and I think, Linda, you probably said it best, it is about balance. We're not trying to close any group home. We're trying to protect residents of group homes, and that includes sober living care. But we also want to protect our neighborhoods. So it's a delicate balance. And I appreciate everything the neighborhoods have been doing, but I think they've been waiting for this ordinance so that we can do some enforcement. We're, again, not trying to put anyone out of business, but we're trying to protect residents of neighborhoods and residents of these group homes. Thank you.
I need a second.
Second.
Is that, who's the second?
Daniel Valenzuela.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure. No, we have to take a separate. We're doing 127, then we'll do 128. There's a second. Anybody else have anything to say? Roll call.
Just real quick.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that the working group includes maybe the American Legion that Sal was mentioning earlier, and also some of these sober living facilities that have some of the best practices. If we can actually make sure that they're a part of this working group, and also all these individuals that testified today, that somehow, some way they get an email or a phone call to let them know about the working group meetings that are scheduled in the future.
Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski, we will add someone from the American Legion. We already do have a couple of sober living home providers, as well as a member of the ASRA Association on our committee. And we'll be happy to add others who spoke today to our notification list. If they give us an email address, we will send them out all the information about it.
Thank you.
And,
Go ahead.
And Vice Mayor, I do want to thank Councilman Stark, because without her, we wouldn't be here today. I mean, so she deserves a lot of credit for making this happen today. Thank you, Mayor.
Question, what do you know when your first meeting will be?
Vice Mayor, members of council, we had our first meeting last Monday of our working group, which was just to introduce and bring a lot of other folks who haven't been a part of the process up to speed on the text amendment, where we're at, all of those issues were talked about. We also had a presentation by Representative Noel Campbell from the Prescott area, who put forth some state legislation a couple years ago regarding sober living. So he came and gave a presentation on his experience with that with the state level. Our next meeting is coming up in July.
Do you know July when? I'm just saying it for the public.
July 19th.
19th?
And that's so that we can, hopefully, if you approve the next item, we'll have our consultant on board so that he can do some work in preparation of that next meeting on the 19th. We needed to get him on board to get moving, but because this was such an imperative issue to the mayor and council, we wanted to make sure we had that first meeting to get the ball rolling.
Thank you, Ellen. My other question to you is, there's been a misconception out in the community regarding, as Councilwoman Stark stated, shutting down sober living homes. And I, along with all those on the committee, were very much clear about having a fine balance within our neighborhoods, but also protecting those that, the operators, but also protecting those that are part of the sober living group, and knowing that this is a holistic system and program, that everybody, it's a win-win. So I would like you to kind of explain regarding the misconception of shutting down sober living homes.
Certainly, Vice Mayor, members of council, the proposed text amendment does not change how we would regulate any of the existing group homes, including sober living homes. Sober living homes have always been considered a handicapped group home by our zoning ordinance. They would have had to meet the quarter-mile spacing requirements when we were enforcing those, meet our other requirements for 6 to 10 of having sprinklers, those types of things. It always applied to everyone across the board as a group home. The challenge is that with sober living homes, they did not have a license requirement at the state. So all the other group homes, when they get their license at the state, they're required to come get local zoning jurisdiction sign off. We tell them what the rules are. So sober living homes, they didn't have to do that. They just opened up. And so some of those opened up and don't meet any of the requirements. Those sober living homes that opened up that do meet all of the requirements, they went through and they got the fire sprinklers put in and did everything like that, they would be grandfathered in under, and if they came in during the non-enforcement time period. But any ones that didn't meet all of those requirements, we wouldn't grandfather them in because they didn't legally establish their operation prior or during that non-enforcement time. That would be a case-by-case basis that we'd have to look at on those, and some of those people, including one gentleman who talked about it here, have already applied and started working towards that for some of their establishments. But anyone who's out there today, we're happy to work with them and figure out, do they meet the requirements or not, and go forward from there with them.
Okay, so what I heard is that those that met the requirements, that followed the process, will be grandfathered in. Those that don't meet the requirements currently, there is a process for them to get them into compliance or into, I don't know if it's compliance is the right word. I'm trying to figure out real quickly in my mind. But what does it mean for those that are not?
Vice Mayor, members of council, I wouldn't say it's a process to get them in compliance. It's a process to evaluate whether or not they were in compliance with the requirements in effect prior to our enforcement time period. So you'll recall there was a memo that came out, and back on May 15th, we started up enforcement. They would have had to have been up, operating, met all of our other legal requirements like fire sprinklers, all those other things prior to that enforcement date in order to be considered grandfathered in under the old regulations. So that's what we will work with them to figure out. Can they establish that pursuant to the existing ordinance process that deals with non-conforming uses? we'll look at each one of those, but it's a case-by-case basis.
Okay. And if they're not, then in the case-by-case basis, you will let them know what is needed.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I was just wanted to get clarity on the fact that we're not closing sober living establishments.
Correct, Vice Mayor.
Okay. All those, are you guys ready to vote? Roll call.
DeCiccio. Yes. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Stark. Valenzuela. Valenzuela.
Yeah. Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Williams. Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. We will now move to item 128.
I'd be happy to make a motion. So I move to approve to enter into a contract with the Law Office of Daniel Lauber, vendor number 3526583, to provide group home consulting services for the Planning and Development Department for up to 1 year in an amount not to exceed $48,000, and adopt the related ordinance.
Councilwoman made the motion, and Councilwoman Williams made the second. I have now 3 cards. Lori Fitzhugh. In favor?
In favor, Laurie Fitzhugh, and I think this is wonderful. Thank you. As the city attorney said, there's areas of complex law that require expertise, and this would be a very welcome steward to guide us through to a good outcome that recognizes, honors, and respects and protects disabled persons that live in residential group home facilities, and also create tools, codes, regulations, or whatever he comes up with that recognize the challenges from this rapid growing industry and how to speak and find that sweet balance point. So thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Gail Palmer? You're in favor. Diane Barker? In favor.
That's right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. I am in favor of this, although I have no interest or pecuniary, obviously. I don't know this person that you're getting for a vendor, but I am in support of the idea. I ended up reading all the volumes of material that you supplied, and the housing and the HUD and so forth. And in order to get this, from what I've heard, all this testimony here, I really think you need to have a specialist that will be able to understand city planning and federal housing and the ADA and this group home. Now, what I want to suggest here is that the group home here, you're talking a lot about sober living. I happen to live, which I consider a group home. The city's put quite a bit of money in through HUD. It's called the Lofts of McKinley. It's the first LEED sustainable building. You're talking about you want a safe and stable for these group homes. They need to be sustainable. I think you need to put that in there. And I think that we need to go and celebrate, for example, this Lofts of McKinley and the company, which is Dunlap McGee, which not you hired to management, but Gorman is. It's the same one you gave $2 million to. They need still to have training on sustainability and get their managers to implement it. Since the time that I called attention to this, that never has there been any mention of any of that when in the lease or in the conduct. And what happens is when the values that you imparted and paid for don't come through. So what I'm saying, yes, I'm very much for this. I'm for the fact we move past old politics. The order from top down, get visibly busy. This here, I'm in support of Paul Barnes, indicating, and I'll finish up, that we need to have an appeal off of planning and development. The thing is, when the zoning administrator has spoken and there is no due process, that civil rights, and I just want to end with this, I suffered and continue to suffer from employment, accommodation, and housing discrimination while living as a free individual in the city of Phoenix and a taxpayer, and that needs to be cured.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you. Those are all the cards willing to speak. Mario Brocta in favor, Wally Graham in favor, Linda Colino in favor, Shirley Dickman in favor, Maria Ewing in favor, and Larissa Balderrama in favor. We have a motion, we have a second, we're ready for roll call. Ready? Go, Chris.
DeCiccio. Yes. Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Stark. Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Williams. Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
It 8-1. It passes unanimously. Thank you. Oh, wait, there's one more. Mickey Hughes? Neutral. Oh, this is item 8. Oh, citizen comment. I don't think they're here. End of agenda.
No, I don't.